We are very pleased. We are very pleased to have you here today to discuss the latest research, share knowledge, and exchange ideas on conservation and management of muskellunge in the Upper St. Lawrence River. Our goal today is to equip fellow anglers that are passionate about muskellunge with the required knowledge and strategies to promote long-term sustainability. Our guest speakers today are authorities in their respective fields and will discuss challenges, solutions, and future opportunities for our river. We hope that you will find the workshop educational and informative as we work towards sustaining our unique aquatic environment on the international St. Lawrence River. And now over to Red Brick, Brian Lambie, and of course, Dr. Farrell.
As we introduce Dr. Farrell, I think that we're really honored that, you know, John Farrell is a professor in aquatic and fisheries science at the Thousand Islands Biological Station, which is part of the environmental science and forestry sector of the State University for New York in Syracuse. And TIBS, as we call it affectionately, has done a tremendous amount to advance muskie science. We've been able to work very closely. Muskies Canada is very limited in its professional science capacity, but by partnering in with institutions like TIBS and Queen's University and the River Institute and a number of other science-based organizations, and especially the ministry, we're able to kind of contribute to or support or work towards really good science. I'm really pleased to mention specifically that Dr. Farrell was inducted into the Muskies Canada Hall of Fame. So he will be getting his Hall of Fame trophy.
Very nice. I'm blown away. Thanks, Peter.
And I'd like to also mention John Anderson, who was also inducted into the Muskies Canada Hall of Fame. So congratulations, John. Well merited. So Dr. Farrell, over to you. It's your show, and we'll just we'll be listening carefully. And if there's an opportunity for comments and discussion, that's great. It's all yours. Thank you, John.
Wow, thank you, Peter. Again, everyone, I'm just blown away by that. That's unexpected. What a nice honor to receive. I know there's a long list of distinguished people that have been inducted into that honor, and just to have my name in there is just humbling. So, thanks so much. You guys it's just a wonderful group of people to work with. I think we're blessed when I look at some other fisheries and management challenges. I think that, the group that revolves around the management of muskies and the saucets just is really, there's none better. There's true partnership between the science and management and the stakeholder groups that work so closely and well together. It's a real honor. So thanks so much for that, everybody. I'm going to move onto my talk here. So let me bring it up. I got a lot of things up on my screen. I got to pick the right one. Let's see. Just a second.
Just while we're doing that, just a couple of housekeeping things. We are recording. If you're not one of the presenters, please mute so the audio quality is better. If you've got questions, you can put them into the chat section. We'll try to catch them all. We're probably going to do questions near the end of presentations as opposed to throughout presentations. And given that everybody's working on a Saturday, we're all going to be great about the questions we ask.
Just a moment. I do a lot of work on Zoom, so that's why I'm surprised I'm having a little difficulty here. Uh, oh, there it is.
Okay, we can see that.
So is that full screen? You guys?
It is now, full screen now.
Great. So, yeah, thanks again for the opportunity. I really look forward to the discussions this morning in the workshop. This is a picture from one of our young technicians who is obviously pretty thrilled to be handling that fish from the St. Lawrence in our spring sampling last year. So again, just moving into it, to get that honor, it's really awesome to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, but obviously I don't do all this work myself, and it would be completely impossible to do without like all the collaboration in teams. Like as we speak, I think there's like 3 or 4 grad students and a number of undergrads that are up at Tibbs this morning, working in the field as usual. And we hired 8 undergrad technicians working with a group this year, and I think there's 5 graduate students, and we're just gearing up for another wonderful season working on the river. They're doing a pike egg take today for a separate study. So we, just to let everybody know, we work with monitoring water chemistry, lower trophic levels, aquatic habitat, wetlands, muskrat populations. We do a big muskrat survey in the winter, and there's a lot of research on walleye and bass and pike, and really all the fishes, and even goes beyond that. We've had studies working on the herpafauna and the birds, and so that I really felt that the biological station needs to be a real place where anybody could come to do biological work that would help with conservation of the St. Lawrence. And the program's really built out of the Muskie project, and there's some people that came before me that really helped lay the foundation. And all these, so many partners, I don't think I've nearly listed them all, make it really exciting group to work with. And I think it's like the golden age. There's just so much good work going on. You're going to hear from Matt and Colin, and everybody is working to advance conservation. And we've got some serious issues that we're facing, so it's a good thing that we have these partnerships to move forward and make progress. The other thing we have is, I like to review the international management plan and give some updates on that. So you've seen this slide. We continue to report in the lower left-hand corner. If you want to see the fairly dry reports that are written, that really cover, all aspects of assessment and monitoring of Lake Ontario and the Upper St. Lawrence, and many other topics. Go to the Great Lakes Fisheries Commission Lake Ontario unit reports. I think the report from last year was put up about a month ago. So it's just laden with information and the hard work that agency and some science and university scientists post up there. So we have a working group, and to manage SASIDs in the system. We meet usually once a year, but when things are going well, it's not always once a year. But we, follow things like biological data and monitoring, and protecting critical habitat and improving fisheries management under the Muskie Management Plan. So that process continues, and you can see the goals of the fishery haven't really changed. We might need to update our management plan. I think we're just so busy. We've been a little behind on that, but it's still, we know that these goals are going to stay, which is like trying to promote and maintain a self-sustaining population, really focusing on the ecological role of that apex predator in the river. It wouldn't be the same without it, and supporting a quality trophy muskellunge fishery that our stakeholders and the economics and the community all enjoy the use of that resource. So, in terms of like updates, I think there's been kind of a wholesale change of regulations in New York State, excuse me, and they moved the opening day of muskellunge to coincide with the opening day of bass, which it always was, but now they instead of like doing the third Saturday approach, it's now June 15. So, and it's a fixed date, so it's opening June 15. We're in discussions with DEC, and we'll probably bring this up at the next meeting because that's a pretty early date. So that might be something that would be worth talking about, but because the spawning period is, I do have records of muskellunge spawning even later than that date. If you look at the way the third Saturday in June used to migrate across the calendar, the June 15 is about as early as it could have been in the past. So, and they fixed it at that date. So I want to look at the information and, make sure we're protecting muskellunge during spawning. But right now that's been a change that was done by DEC. We're supposed to have common regulations between as part of the international management. And so that's something that, we'll have to consider and make recommendations on. So that's an update on management. Today, this is kind of what I wanted to cover. And I was talking with Peter before the meeting started, and he suggested that we have more of a discussion format instead of me talking the entire time. And, I think so if there's areas that you want to pop in and ask questions about, or I might ask questions of you, we'll stop and have a little discussion. It's possible we won't get through the presentation, but I thought having that interaction would probably be beneficial. So I hope to go over what's going on with the muskellunge recovery program, give you an update on that. And then there's going to be some changes to the culture program I wanted to discuss with you. So most of you are well aware that we're doing experimental stocking of muskie to try to restore spawning and nursery populations that have been impacted by some of the ecological changes in the river. And then we've employed a citizen science program that was launched last year to help build better connections between angling and angling groups and data collection that might help inform the success of that program. And then there's a new project that's been funded that we put together with a group of partners, really exciting. And we're going to be using the acoustic array and putting out some tags on muskellunge beginning in 2023. And another part of that that's really exciting is we're working with a geneticist. So there's going to be some really advanced conservation genetics applied to the entire conservation effort. So I'll give you an update on those things. So Peter mentioned the conservation status and that we're up against things. Sometimes I bring out I have some of our index data, but basically there's been a big decline in the spawning populations. I've got a little bit of work that we did recently with some eDNA and some other sampling methods that I'll show you, but there's been very low levels of young of the year production. So we're concerned about recruitment. The fisheries being monitored as well. I've got a little bit of information on that today. There's been this VHSV outbreak, and that kind of reared its ugly head last year. We I think had like half a dozen adults that were found dead in the river, and some groups really worked hard to recover some of those individuals. There was one individual that ended up being tested positive down at Cornell that was found in the Lake St. Lawrence area last April, about a year ago. And I have a student who's actually doing like some really advanced sequencing work, looking at like the evolution of that virus in fish populations and kind of testing the the idea that the round goby are like the key reservoir for the virus in the St. Lawrence River. And so, one of the concerns is that this is a rhabdovirus and that it's changed. And if it changes enough, it can elicit, a new round of mortality on muskellunge. So that's what we're really concerned about and watching. So I think everybody needs to be vigilant on the water this year for seeing if, and we really do need like what's called moribund fish. So these are, if you see fish that are still barely alive or very recently deceased, those are the ones that they need to do the testing work. If it's a fish that's decomposed, I think we can just collect some basic data on it. It would be good to get a length, possibly, record the location, take a photo, and let either the resource managers know about it, Colin or Jana Lantry on the U.S. side, or me or anyone else, so it gets into the network that we know that was a mortality event that we need to think about. So yeah, we're tracking this mortality, and then again, there's been low levels of success, and that could also be due to predation by invasive round goby. So we past day experiments that were on species, including muskellunge and goby egg predation, prey accumulation. So,
Hey, John, I don't know if you can hear us. You're breaking up a little bit. I'm wondering if maybe if you turn off your video, it might improve the quality of your audio.
you guys got me back?
Yep. I'm wondering if you turn off your camera, it might improve the quality of your audio.
Sure. Was I breaking up a little bit?
We probably lost about the last 60 seconds or so.
Oh, okay. That's unfortunate. But so anyhow, I was just talking about some of these factors related to the population status, and one of the issues is VHSV, obviously, and I think you heard the part about trying to monitor and being vigilant for any dead muskellunge this year. Did you guys hear that one?
We did hear that.
Yeah, we
Okay,
did.
good.
John, we've lost your screen sharing though. Okay, so if you can see if we can get that back up.
Yeah, sorry about that. I must be, I'm at home and my internet is acting up. Let's see.
There we go. We can see it now.
Got it back?
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, if any time, there's a problem, just let me know. But we were talking about this round goby egg predation and how we have done some experiments, and these gobies can find the eggs in really complex habitats quite rapidly. And then, we're also seeing changes in nursery habitat. So we monitor the habitat quality of nursery areas in the system. And one of the things we're concerned about is that there's water soldier has been detected in the Bay of Quinte region. So it's an invasive macrophyte that takes over and outcompetes our native habitat, and that it kind of attacks areas and spreads in areas that might be quality muskie nursery habitat. So that's something that I'm concerned about. It moved out of the Trent Severn system. I think there were numerous groups that for 8-9 years have been trying to eradicate it in that system, and have been really aggressive, but it looked like that plant species has moved downstream and is now in the Bay of Quinte. So it's really poised to move into the Thousand Islands area and maybe downstream in the St. Lawrence River. So it's something I'm really concerned about, looking out for this water soldier invasion and how it might impact our muskie nursery sites, just like we need another thing, right? And but hopefully that won't play out and become like a big time issue for critical muskie habitat, but it's something we got to watch closely. Let's see. There we go. So yeah, we continue to monitor the fishery through our diary program. So this is the update. It includes the 2022 angling season. So, we have the effort here, and you can see effort has this interesting variability in it. So that's the number of angler hours, and you can see the effort plummeted way down here in 2022. Anybody want to guess why that is? I'm sure you can guess. Low water, right? So I think that the reduction in effort is related to the extremely low water levels that we had last fall. We had several diaries return that people just had to pull their boats and didn't get out. So for those who did get out, I think they had pretty good fishing. You can see this long-term trend where we had like really high catch rates in the early 2000s, and then it made a big decline, and we've kind of been bouncing around. But you can see since 2016, it's kind of been on a slight rise. So, the fishery seems to be hanging in there and doing pretty well, at least according to our diary program. This sort of data comes with a lot of caveats. Of course, there's people that have come in and out of the program. There's just a few people that have been in it for most of the entire data set, but it's really useful in gauging where we are. If we get up our management goals here at 0.1 fish per hour or 1 muskellunge per 10 hours fish. So that's the management goal. And, we're not really at that, but it's fluctuating. And we actually have anglers that do better than this. And if they're like new to the program, we keep that information like out of the long-term index. And we have people that focus in Lake St. Lawrence. So, catch rates vary by individual and location in the river, as you guys know. But we try to keep this as standard as possible to try to monitor, kind of the average fishery. And this is what we're seeing. And then I just, wanted to mention that we work collaboratively with a number of groups on the U.S. side through this fish habitat conservation strategy. So there's a focus on improving fish habitat, reproductive habitat, and we focus on walleye, northern pike, and muskellunge in this process. So there's projects that go on to try to improve habitat and also do research and management related to habitat conservation. So I just wanted to stick that in there. This has been going on, and it's funded through the dam relicensing funds that are managed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. But we work closely with DEC and other groups that can actually do things. And a lot of it's been targeting northern pike and walleye habitat, but we do have muskie projects as well. I mentioned like going back to some of the monitoring, we have a number of sites that we monitor annually for spawning adult muskellunge. And these are the index, we call these the index bays. And this data here really shows kind of the decline or post VHSD decline status of some of these bays. So you may have heard of Blind Bay here in the news. This is the one that is being looked at and is a threat for development here, and they're trying to work to protect that site. And it used to be one of the most prolific spawning areas in the Clayton area. And I think we've handled, something like 120 muskellunge at this site over the years. And then we had a decline in those adults around the Blind Bay area, which is near Fisher's Landing. And, we started looking at them, wondering if the trap nets might be avoided and how effective they are. So we started doing spotlight surveys during the spawning run and, looking for these fish, and we didn't really see anything. And then we actually worked with one of our graduate students, developed an eDNA assay for muskellunge. So we actually did water sampling, and some good news came out of it. We found that many of these sites that have had kind of sporadic detections with trap nets and spotlighting, we really need to add seining in here as well as an indicator of reproductive success in the presence of muskie. But when we looked at DNA, it told us that there were muskellunge that still existed in the site that we weren't effectively sampling. So with the exception of one site at Payos Bay down near Cape Vincent, we weren't able to detect anything. So this site looks like muskellunge had truly been extirpated from Payos Bay down near Cape Vincent, but we were able to detect muskie DNA at these other sites. So it means that they possibly still exist in those places, which is kind of good news. We're glad to hear that, but they're at really low abundance. So those are some of the justifications for why we've gone into a muskie recovery program. So we're in the through 5 years, believe it or not, of a muskellunge population enhancement study. And so we've been releasing fry and fingerling muskellunge into a number of nursery sites along the U.S. side of the St. Lawrence River and also in Eastern Lake Ontario. And we're trying to focus on restoration of populations and enhance natural reproduction in these sites. So we do broodstock collections. This is a picture from last spring. Nice day. And here's JP LeBlanc and Scott Schluter. And I think that's Justin Ekrit from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and myself taking eggs from spawning muskellunge. And I think this day we were downriver near the Robert Moses Saunders Dam and really caught some nice fish and were able to exceed I think we tripled our quota. You'll hear more about that in a moment, but we bring the fish back to the Tibbs lab, incubate the eggs. We do a fry stocking. So this is an advanced fry muskellunge. And then we also have been raising larger fingerlings and inserting a pit tag into those fish. So this is an example of muskellunge being intensively cultured in our raceway. And some of you, I think, came out for a visit last year to see the operation. So, there's a lot of research and monitoring that's going on. And I'm going to give you some highlights here in a moment. So this is not a great slide, but I threw it together from some of our reports. And what's interesting is this is our brood stock and our adult index data just from last year. So you can look at these are the sites that are trap netted. We have index sites, and then we have roving sites where we're looking for getting new information. So we increased our roving sites in Eastern Lake Ontario last year. And we also work with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They do the sturgeon work down at the near the Robert Moses Saunders Power Dam, and we're working in the Lake St. Lawrence region. And we work closely with them, and they run nets during weekdays down at these sites in Lake St. Lawrence, and they really crushed them. So you can see this effort here of 621 net nights in the TI and Eastern Lake Ontario region for a capture of 6 muskellunge. 0.01 is the catch per unit effort, catch per net night. Not doing very well there, lots of zeros in this database and a couple of pairs here and there. And then when we looked at Lake St. Lawrence, the effort was much less, 49 net nights, and they caught 15 muskellunge. So the CUE's through the roof. So it's just this fantastic year So a lot of these fish were used in this past year's broodstock collection. We did get some eggs from the TI region as well. We've done genetics work, so we know that the genetics of these fish are very, very similar. So there's no reservations about, using Lake St. Lawrence in other parts of the St. Lawrence River. We're you'll hear more about that genetic study in a moment, but this is kind of, our long-term index of the TI region. And you can see that, we used to have much higher catch per unit effort, even greater in 2003, and then BHSV, we've seen this kind of decline. So this is a really basic data set. So, we continue to see pretty low levels in our spawning index. So that's not being necessarily reflected in the fishery too much, but, we're concerned that the recruitment to the population is declined. And that's part of the research that's going on. Let's see. So this is a map of the experimental stocking locations. So you're going from Eastern Lake Ontario through all these sites on the US side. There's a lot of great sites around Grindstone Island here, and then Eel Bay, and then along the US mainland. And then we're also getting some sites down here near Waddington in the Lake St. Lawrence area. So we do a stocking early of these advanced fry, and we've been studying these. We follow up, and you're going to hear about that assessment work. And then here's a picture of one of the fingerlings that was released. They're minnow finished, so this one probably just ate a few minnows, and that's why it looks so fat. But we really want the river to grow these fish out, so we're not stocking excessive sizes. So we try to get them into the river early, so they have a period of time where they can grow. And we really want these fish to imprint on the site so we can detect them later on as adults. And we'll get to that in a moment. So here's some of the stocking information that's gone on for the study. So these are advanced fry stock. We really did well in 2021, and 2022 is the first year that we've had a really full complement of advanced fry and fingerlings. So we had good fingerling success back in 2017. So these fish are now going to be 6 years old. So they should start to enter, if some of them survive, we should start to be able to detect these. We had a smaller number in 2019, but like I said, we have a quota of about 6,000, and I think it's actually 5,300. And we actually did really, really well this year, and released over 18,000 fall fingerlings. And then this is the total number stocked. Here's a picture of some of the fall fingerlings. I think these were caught during assessment, actually. So these were caught by seining. So you're going to hear from Matt, and he provides a really useful piece of information, because Matt is working in sites that aren't receiving any stocking, where we are working in sites where we're doing one survey that assesses the fry stocking, and then we do a later survey in the fall that assesses the fingerlings when they go out in around September 1st. Okay. So again, post-stocking evaluation, all those fry are immersed in OTC. It's a chemical, oxytetracycline, and it puts a fluorescent band. So when you remove the otolith bone from the fish and you transmit ultraviolet light through it on a special microscope, it'll actually glow and tell us that fish came from our laboratory. So we take pretty small samples because we value the muskies so much. But we were able to determine if the fish came from our lab or not. The unfortunate part is you have to sacrifice the fish to get this bone. Then that's for the fry, and then for the fingerlings, they're getting this 8mm pit tag. So these fish are being released, and then we're doing assessment work primarily by seining to determine how they're doing. And then after they kind of grow and they'll leave these nursery areas as juveniles after their first year, and then we won't see them again until adulthood. So that's important. So this is our long-term seining index. We can see this is our catch per seine haul. And we have two types of seines. There's a small fine mesh seine, then there's a larger 60-foot seine, so that it's twice the size. So we're actually monitoring each one of these data points represents about it is exactly 90 seine hauls that are completed in 11 sites throughout the region. And you can see, the effect. This is what we're really concerned about, this big drop in reproduction that was seen in the mid 2000s, and also just the continuation of that. And you can see we did an experimental fry stocking at 4 sites. So this is 4 sites of fry stocking that were done in 2013, 14, and 15 that were a pilot study to what we're doing now. And then we're also seeing, the fry stocking of 2021 and 2022. So you can see the influence that fry stocking had on the catch per unit effort of muskies. So it went way up. So, that's pretty exciting. But what we're kind of concerned about is that, we're not seeing quite as much survival as what we saw historically. So I don't have this data here, but I did experimental fry stocking as part of a separate project to study muskellunge in 1990 through 96. So this 96 data point is actually a year that was fry stocked. And there were years before that aren't shown in the data. So we have this baseline of what fry stocked muskellunge should perform in terms of survival. And we're not quite seeing, we're seeing a significant benefit, but it's not quite as good as what we saw in the 1990s. So then I think I mentioned that we're doing some other sampling as well. So we retained 14 muskie for the OTC evaluation. We're still working on that right now. And then we seine these index areas, and we found that 35 of 47 of the fish that were wanded were tagged. So there was a high rate of fingerling prevalence in the system. So this July survey, we caught 35 muskie that were likely almost entirely related to the fry stocking program. And because the fingerlings were stocked later, we caught 12 of those in the August survey. And then what was really exciting is we did a survey in October and November, and we caught 46 muskies, and that was in half the number of sites. So, it told us that even though we're, seeing kind of fairly low levels here, we are detecting muskellunge beyond what we just see with wild fish. We saw this huge spike in the fall. So it told us that there's probably fish that we're not detecting here that might be in deeper water, or they're being concentrated, or they're more vulnerable to the gear. But our catch rates went way up in the fall survey. And there's, some really nice fish that are coming out. So this is one, I think this one was almost 12 inches that we caught in the fall survey, which was pretty exciting. We were able to, because these fish are pit tagged, it's pretty neat. We're able to monitor their individual growth. So these are the story of growth for 2 different fish that we caught. And this one we actually caught 3 times. And it was a fish that was part of the fingerling stocking. And then this fish way up here was a fish that we think came from the fry stocking program. And you can see it's significantly larger. And its growth rate was just extraordinary. So the fry stock fish, the river can really grow these things to be quite extraordinary fitness for these individuals. So that's some new information. There's also some information we're collecting on diet. So we do a process called gastric lavage. So we actually put a little tube down the throat of the muskellunge and squirt some water in there and it'll regurgitate what it's been eating. And we do a diet analysis. So this is just a little bit of summary data on the diet analysis from the fish this year. And, we see Natropus species. These are minnows that they're eating. 18% banded killifish, which is like a top minnow that they're consuming. These are empty stomachs, so a high prevalence of nothing in their stomachs. But what's interesting here is 14% of their diet was round goby. So they're eating like early life stages of round goby in the system. So that's kind of neat. And I think we even detected a tube-nosed goby from the stomach of muskellunge this year. So that's kind of new information. So does anybody have any questions on any of that before I move into our culture plan?
Not seeing any in the chat. If anybody goes off mute or just wants to chime in.
Yeah, John, it's Davin Heimbach here, research director for Muskies Canada. How you doing?
Good.
Good. Great stuff. I know we've been following along very closely over the last year or so. Anyways, just want to ask you the question as far as your rearing success. What are some of the secrets to hitting those kind of numbers?
Yeah, I think the secrets were just a lot of hard work. So you're going to hear some updates on our culture plan. It was, there's something kind of funny, not really funny, but we, when we did egg take, you have to inventory the eggs, and we inventoried the eggs. You can do it volumetrically, you can do it gravimetrically by weight. And what we did, we made a slight mistake, and when we took eggs, we apply a formula to know like how many eggs there are per unit, and we did that prior to water hardening. So the eggs will take on water and become turgid, and it takes about an hour for that to happen. So if you inventory your eggs and then apply like an equation that's post water hardened, you'll end up with more eggs. And that's what happened to us. So we ended up taking, not a crazy number more, but we took more eggs than we normally do. And it led to a significant increase in workload, if you will. And I think it ultimately led to us tripling our quota, because we really worked hard and maintained good survival. These fish are fed brine shrimp. So they come into the lab. Hopefully we also had really good fertilization success of the eggs. So we extract the milk from the male muskie using syringes, and you got to keep, it's called the dry method. You got to keep all the water out of it. Ironically, you keep the eggs just coming out of the female with no water whatsoever. And then you mix that milk with the syringe, and distribute it. And then you activate the fertilization process just by saturating those eggs in water. And we had really good fertilization success. We have a good team. And then those eggs go into the hatching jars. The ones that weren't fertilized or were damaged will die off. And then we did a really nice job of siphoning those off. Those eggs then hatched out without much mortality at all. And then, the technicians just really kept the tanks clean and removed all the dead eggs. We have really nice spring water to use at the Tibbs lab to incubate eggs in early life stages of these fish. Comes right out of the ground, and it's very pure, and it stays at a nice constant temperature. And then those fish swim up, and we incubate. We have a really nice system for incubating brine shrimp and feeding. So people work, basically from 6:30, 7, usually 6:30 in the morning till 9, 10 p.m. at night every day of the week for, gosh, it was 100 days or something. So and we have teams that rotate through that and had really good, success. But the problem with it is that, we're researchers, and it takes an incredible amount of time. So we're proposing a change. So that's a good segue into our new culture plan. So that's intensive culture. So I didn't mention we switched to dry feed, and we have automatic dry feeders. And that's when, as soon as you start using artificial dry feed and you put it on the fish, disease problems with bacterial gill disease happen like instantly. It's like unavoidable. So you have to really keep things clean and treat those fish periodically to keep that at bay. So we did a good job with that as well, and got good survival. So that's what happened. So here's our new culture plan. We just proposed and got some funding from the Fishery Advisory Committee of FEMREF. So I just mentioned this rearing process, so I can kind of click through this. But what we're proposing to do this year is we're going to still do the rearing. We'll do the egg take, incubation and hatch and rearing at Tibbs, but we're gonna and then we're gonna do our advanced fry stocking, and then we're actually gonna work with the South at Sealick Fish Hatchery down in the central New York, and they have some brand new ponds. So we have 3 ponds that are assigned to this project, and there's a great group down there, a fish hatchery manager. We've had meetings, and we're actually going to be pond rearing muskellunge this year. So we're pretty excited. So the reason we're doing this is, one, to produce hopefully a better product. Not that the other product was bad, but these fish will be grown outside, and they're going to be foraging on live food instead of dry food, which I think is a real advantage for growth, and also just selection of traits that fish are actively feeding on their own and preying on minnows. So, we're going to have forage of spawning fathead minnows in these ponds. They're going to be used for walleye production prior to the muskie getting there. So they're going to be really productive and seeded. They'll be draining them for the walleye and then refilling them. So we feel that the zooplankton and all the processes that lead to good productivity will be there and set for the muskellunge culture period. So that's our new approach that's going to be this year, is to do pond culture. So we're excited to try that. Those fingerlings are going to go back to Tibbs. They're going to have to be, we're going to need all the help we can get to get these things tagged and released into the environment. And then they'll be stocked out. So the fry go hopefully around July 1st, and then the fingerlings will go hopefully in late August, and hopefully no later than early September. So that's the plan for this year. And we got funding and new support from New York State DEC at the South at Sealick Hatchery. So
John, we've got a question from Chris Purdy, who's the Ottawa chapter chair, who says, is it fair to say stocking fry versus fingerlings is yielding better results, or vice versa?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, I am a big proponent of fry stocking, because I think for improving and restoring muskie populations, I'm a biggest proponent for natural reproduction, and that's where our goal is. But yeah, the fry and that's part of the study, is comparing the performance of these life stages for doing what we're trying to do. We're really excited about the fry stocking, and it does increase the catch per unit effort, like you saw in those graphs in our nursery locations. But the fingerling stocking is going to put a lot more biomass out there. So we'll be able to compare, hopefully, in the adults produced, whether or not which approach drove the restoration of spawning in nursery sites. So right now it's kind of still an ongoing study, but the fry stocking is kind of a more natural product, and it tells us more about the functioning of the nursery habitat. because they're going in there at a very sensitive early life stage versus, a fingerling. But these aren't really big fingerlings. Some programs that have different goals are stocking huge fingerlings. And, it's fine to like do that if you want to create, something that might be temporary, but you really need that reproduction in order to, to allow like evolutionary processes and selection to maintain the fish population. So I hope that helps. We have a lot more information on it that I presented today. So this is our new plan. This is just kind of information. It's about pond rearing and using fathead minnows. So this is an established technique. It does have some risk. You have to establish the weather really affects fathead minnows, and we're going to be using 5 to 15 pounds per acre of those ponds. We're going to be needing some mobile aeration systems to be able to transport the fish. And then we also requested and received funding for 18,000 mini pit tags for the final 3 years of the stocking program.
Don, we have
So-
another question from Ryan Pickering, who's the president of Muskies Canada. Cost comparison. How many fry can you supply compared to the cost of supplying a fingerling?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the other advantage of fry is that it's really cheap. I have to look in my notes to get an exact number, but the Artemia is fairly expensive, especially with the conditions that we're seeing, like on Great Salt Lake, where all the Artemia come from. But so you might spend $80. Just a coffee can size jar of Artemia, but it's really quite a straightforward process. And then once you get into like moving fish and feeding them for periods of months, that's where and fighting diseases and things of that nature. The staff time is a huge part. So yeah, those fingerlings, I've seen numbers of like $9 to $15 a fish and stuff like that. I'm sure the prices are going up, whereas to raise a lot of fry quickly is quite less intensive, so much cheaper. Okay, let's see. I'm going to move on. So we're going to move on to like an important part of the assessment of the Muskie Recovery Program. That's the citizen science program that was created last year. And you can see these characters here that came and visited Tibbs. There were a lot more that came to an event. We had a workshop last year. We'll probably have another workshop this year. There's so many groups that were instrumental to helping support the development of this considerable program that's just getting off the ground. There's all these different funding agencies. I apologize if I didn't mention anyone because there's so many people that have contributed to this, but we received grants from numerous groups that help support it. We still have some of those funds in our account to continue to support it. We had a workshop at the Antique Boat Museum that they didn't charge us anything for. Where we gave backgrounds to muskie management, and we talked just like today, we talked about the need for citizen science, and then we went through a lot of procedural stuff about how to collect and report data, explaining protocols and data requirements and procedures, and focusing. We had discussions about catch and release, I wanted to just share some of the 2002 experiences, but I think one of the greatest parts of this workshop is it was like really international. We had participation from both sides, and it was just the individual interactions that I think were some of the most powerful parts of the experience. So, and it culminated with that visit to Tibbs, so people got to see the muskies in our rearing facility. So, there's a research kit that was supplied. So a lot of the funding went to the development of these kits that include like a pit tag wand, so that the anglers have access to the ability to detect the pit tags that were put in our fingerlings that we hope will be detectable in the fish they catch when they reach adulthood and enter the fishery. So that's really critical information. So they're going to be measuring fish and also injecting fish in some cases with pit tags where we can get maybe some population estimates. And they're also collecting probably one of the most important things is the genetic tissue samples. So they have a sample vial and they take a small piece of fin and we get that. So we had 10 kits. We now have 10 kits available to anglers in the US and 10 in Canada. I think we could still use some more really dedicated. We're looking for, angler groups that are really interested in participating, and because there's a considerable effort that goes into this. So it's going to interfere and change your fishing experience. We're hoping that it'll enhance it to participate in the science, but we kind of had a new, we gave it a try this year, and we want to continue to develop and improve the program. So the objectives were to evaluate this survival and success of the recovery program that I just described, and then get a better understanding of the muskie population, like how many, where do they go, growth rates, reproductive homing, and many other questions that we need for management to understand this fish and how it's reacting to environmental change and angling itself. So that's kind of what this thing's all about. This is I don't know if I've updated this, but we have pit tags out in the system, and Colin's putting pit tags out as well, and Fish and Wildlife as well. So there's 125 adults have been pit tagged since 2011 through the spawning surveys. This last year, there were 24 adults tagged by these organizations. And so those fish are hopefully out there healthy and swimming in the river. Some of these fish from 2011 are probably still around because their longevity can be, upwards over 25 years. So it's very possible some of our biggest fish, so we get really unique, a pit tag gives you a unique identifier. So we can look at individual fish and their locations and growth with the pit tags. And then we have these fish are now going to be age 6, so they're getting better than 3 feet, and they're going to be coming in to spawn. So some of the 4,500 fingerlings that were stocked in 2017, we're hoping to see this year. That would be an amazing moment. We've got these fish that are going to be age 4 from 2019, and we're also tagging our YOY. That are untagged. So in 2020 and 21, there were 75 YOY tagged that are getting older. So we continue to tag YOY as well. So anglers may catch those as they enter the fishery. So this is older information because we have 6,000 fish that were tagged this year that can be added to this. So it's up getting closer to 12,000 fish tagged. And future tagging will include anglers putting tags in. So there were, I think, 5 tags applied in the program this year, mostly on the Canadian side. So, we're going to see if that'll continue to expand. And then we're going to continue to be putting pit tags in the fish. So, there was a decision tree in the training of when you wand the fish was the first thing to do. And then, if it had a tag, we record a photo of the identifier and the proportions of the fish and report it. There was Chad Lappa developed a nice reporting system that's kind of a modification of the Chapter 69 electronic angler diary submission system to the St. Lawrence Project. So, it's really quite slick. And then if a pit tag wasn't detected, this is the information. So we had a training about how to do all this stuff. We noticed that this year, a lot of the anglers were new to it. They were out in kind of difficult conditions. We had warm water early, so we kind of postponed the project till September 1st. We think we're going to do that again this year. So we're going to really focus on the fall fishery to protect the muskies. And then, so we'll hopefully, we also had a kind of follow-up survey and got some feedback. I haven't summarized that for today. I apologize, but we did get a lot of verbal feedback, and I think people want more training to be more comfortable. It's difficult to be out there and on your own and to do all this data collection. So, we're gonna kind of do this again with the workshop and get more feedback to try to optimize it more. But one thing that was really clear is everybody was really excited about the program and wanted to be part of it and continue to be part of it. So we feel like we have really good camaraderie in terms of like making this work, and we're going to continue to try to support it and grow it. Measuring the fish. This is some of the stuff that was going on, and people normally do that anyhow. And then, wanding the fish. There's a 15-digit tag number, taking a photo of it, getting the location of the catch, releasing the fish unharmed. Maybe not every fish should be tagged. So, there's kind of an assessment of whether that fish is going to be okay. So we don't want to, add additional stress to it. Genetic sample, really important, just taking it from the corner of the caudal fin, just a little tiny piece of 1 centimeter squared, about the size of a dime or less, into the vial for our genetics work. We take a scale sample. It's probably one of the less important things, but it's a backup genetic sampling tool. It can be used for aging for young muskellunge, but it's not a very reliable aging technique. And then filling out a fish scale envelope, probably not with a typewriter like with this electronic, but handwritten. And then, inserting a tag into the fish, which is one of the most challenging parts. But once you tag about 6,000 fingerlings, you get a good knack for this. But this is something that I think the anglers need to become comfortable with. We don't require that people do this, but that's part of the project.
John, we have a question if you've got a
Sure.
moment.
Yep.
Yes, I have a question. How expensive are the pit tag kits?
Yeah, and I want to thank like Rob McCrae and all these muskie groups, Trevor and others that contributed funds and the grants, but they were I think about $800 a piece. So yeah, just in kits alone, I think that was like over $8,000 or $9,000. So it's a significant investment, and they're very professional kits, and we're hoping that people can keep them in their boat and it'll just become part of their muskie fishing lifestyle. But yeah, if they're, I can understand if people, if it interferes with their fishing experience, that they might not want to participate. So we're kind of focusing on people that really want to contribute and enjoy that kind of part, because it is extra handling, and it would take time away from the angling and might change the angling experience a little bit. We hope to minimize that. So let's see. So yeah, I mentioned the release and reporting. So there's we have another program which is also very important. You saw the data, and that's our angler diary program. So that's another for people that might not want to do the more intensive focus. They could join the and do the angler diary program. And we thank Chad Lappa from he's just a computer guy, so he put together a beautiful online system. Some people prefer the original books, so we provide those. And that's been going on since 1999, and really important to track the fishery. So that's we also got into catch and release. Release a muskie is so important. Here's a release, which is kind of cool. You can see that muskie swimming off, and that one looks really happy, doesn't it? It's just getting away, and looks really healthy. So that's what we kind of want to promote. And, release is proven. You guys know that. We actually did studies on it and saw increased mean size and reproduction increases following catch and release adoption. Save the River started a wonderful program in 1987. And then, there's other studies about declining annual mortality, John Castleman's work, and then Sean Landsman and Hessenauer's more recent studies, looking at mortality for catch and release muskellunge and finding it quite low, using specialized recreational fishing gear. So that muskie anglers tend to do well with this. There's a recent study, my former PhD student, Derek Crane, his graduate student, and this is a southern river, but they looked at catch and release and showed low catch rates and high mortality during high water temperatures. So this was a big warning sign that, when you're fishing in those summer hot days, that, it's kind of a different set of circumstances. Those fish, when they're thermally stressed, it puts additional strain on them. I could get into what I teach about in ichthyology with like red and white mussel and, how these fish are, they really are sit and wait predators. So they burn their energy up and then they're kind of spent, right? And it's at that time that they need to recover, and high water temperatures can really inhibit the release success. So that's one of the reasons why we're postponing. We're really going to focus on the fall, because this added stress on the fish is something we, obviously the goal is not to harm the fish. We want them to release well, even after all that data collection. So that's something that's an adjustment that we're making to protect them. Tips for, we went over some tips for, we can always improve. You guys do a really good job with this, but, we talked about how to best release muskellunge to limit their stress. And then, just some thoughts on all that is, we think natural reproduction is really what's about sustainability in the river. There's lots of management partners in place, and, we've got a great group. This is a long-term study to guide and evaluate the success of the recovery program and the population. It's adaptive, will continue to change with research. That's what research is all about. We got a lot of work going on with these uncertainties. So there's things that need to be understood about invasive species. I mentioned water soldier today, and then we're still dealing with VHS in the environment. So habitat protection, restoration, and sound management are just key principles to help us with muskie conservation and sustainability. Collaborations, commitment, and funding help make that happen. And you guys are obviously a huge part of this whole process. And, thanks for the invitation. And I think that's most of my time, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, John. We've got a couple of questions for you that have come in over the last few minutes in the chat. So one from Matt Lee. After the final 3 years, what will go into determining whether the stocking program continues?
Yeah, we'll revisit it. I'm not saying it won't continue. I think we're going to take a breather and revisit all the data. We'll probably have a really big workshop meeting. We'll look at the science. We'll talk to our funding agencies. It happens to coincide with our funding cycle through the Environmental Protection Fund through DEC, New York State DEC. And, if we start seeing really positive indicators of building the population back, maybe we would take a pause. But if we see, kind of improvement in the population, but we're not quite there, there'll probably be discussion to continue with some element. We'll look at the science of, the fry versus fingerlings and the effects on the genetics. I didn't really, because we used so much time, I didn't really get, to the second part of my presentation, which was, we're going to be going into a study where we're looking at the movements. So, maybe at a future meeting, I could, we have a big collaboration coming up. We're putting out 34 acoustic tags, working with DEC, Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources, and Colin might mention this because he's a big part of the project. Scott Schluter and Fish and Wildlife Service, and then Daniel Hattin down in Quebec below the dam. So we're going to be looking at putting fish with tags into the acoustic array from Eastern Lake Ontario all the way to Lake St. Francis. So really exciting partnership. I probably should have focused on that, but we just got funding to do it. And the other exciting thing about it that I just want to mention quick is there's a geneticist, Dr. Nick Sard from Oswego State University, who is just an incredible evolutionary biologist and conservation geneticist. He worked on salmon in the Pacific Northwest, and he does this thing called sibship. So he looks at sibling relationships. It's a perfect application to understanding how young of the year muskellunge relate to the adult stock. And, we're just going to give them this huge genetic archive. And, I'm the ecologist. I'll work with the geneticist, and we'll try to help inform management with some really new information on genetics and movements in the muskie population. So I think we'll just have to save that. But here's another question. What are some visible signs of VHSV in muskies? Really good question. So muskies can develop, the disease is hemorrhagic. It's a hemorrhagic disease. So you can get eye bulging. You can get visible hemorrhages on the fins. So the fins can look like really bloodied. The fish might be lethargic. But typically when a muskellunge has like an active like viral infection, it's probably not going to recover from it. But we have fish that carry the virus too. So, whether or not they all die is unknown. So, they'll show signs of hemorrhaging, from the internal organs. And sometimes you'll see pale gills. So if that blood is like accumulating from hemorrhaging in the body cavity, it's not in the gill. So the gill might be very pale. We do have some archives of images of fish that are suffering from it. So that's a really good question. And we want to know what you guys are seeing on the water.
John, there's a question a little bit earlier. Does your diary program support Muskies Canada diary results?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about that, and we'd love to, look at that information and compare it to ours. And I encourage people to use the diary program that are fishing on the St. Lawrence, but I know there's the lunge log as well. And, we probably want to, I don't know if people should choose like one or the other, because if you contribute to both, it might kind of bias the effort and the result.
John, can I step in here? It's Rob McCrae.
Hi, Rob.
We have been looking at collecting or collating our data from the Upper St. Lawrence in through Lake St. Francis, into Lake St. Francis and through Lake St. Lawrence, collating that data, and I mean even including upwards of the St. Lawrence River in Montreal, just to make sure you have a single document that shows the catch rates. I've spoken to Pierre, who is our kind of our guru, and of course Davin Heinbuch, which you spoke to earlier. He's kind of the father of our program here. I'll speak with them specifically on the reporting and give you a single page or a page and a half of the data that you would require, that you would consider useful for it, and from there you could tell us if you want more of it or what you receive is good enough.
Davin has just posted a comment on the chat as well. saying that we would be happy to share with you. And one way ours varies from lunge log is that we log effort.
Great. Yeah, I would love to see that and compare it to our index and, yep, fantastic. And it's great that you guys do effort because it's, much more valuable when you can have a catch per effort.
So a question from Davin.
Sorry, no question. I was just making just a comment there in the chat that data is available, John, and we can discuss later too what you might be looking for. But yeah, the one thing that we do have is we have a lot of log diary records, and it's all based on catch per unit effort. So
Fantastic. Yeah, I'd love to see that. I haven't seen it, and I think I've seen versions of it in the past, but it's been a while, and could be very valuable information.
yeah, ask and you shall receive.
Thank you.
No problem.
Well, John, as a Hall of Fame member, you'll get a lifetime membership, and we have some really interesting analytic tools that have been developed to go along with the Muskies Canada data information. So there's some really good functionality to be able to look at and analyze the data right within the Muskies Canada tool set. So you'll be able to log into that and be able to take advantage of that. So great opportunity to be able to share again our citizen science that we've been developing for a long time to be able for you to be able to analyze that as well. And it provides a little bit of different information than the lunge log program, but it's all useful body of knowledge to be able to work with. So thanks, Davin, and thanks, John, for that.
Yeah, that's exciting. I think we'd really benefit from access to that and continued collaboration. So look forward to that.
Sounds good.
Any other questions for Dr. Farrell while we get ready? Matt, you'll be up in a moment or two if you're just about ready to go. But we got a question from Andrej.
Yes, with those pit kits, how complicated or how intense is the training for the angler to use it properly out on the water?
For the wand part and the kit in general?
The whole kit.
Yeah, you might want to talk to some of the people starting in the program, but we try to minimize the impact on the fishing experience. It's I think one of the biggest issues is holding the fish that we're running into. So whether people are using a cradle or if they have, ideally people have like a large enough live well, which is kind of rare to hold a muskellunge on their boat. So, I think people are most successfully just having a long handled net and keeping the fish in the water the whole time. So it's a lot of like tough on the back kind of work. We want to minimize holding. So I don't think it's, people who muskie fish tend to have a lot of experience holding and working with them. And, it looks like a long list of things, but when you're efficient and you lay everything out like prior to the process, you can kind of bang through it pretty quickly. And that, we have a lot of experience from our spring spawning work, but we put the fish in a big tank. People are hanging over the gunnel, working in a net, and depending on the weather conditions, it can be challenging.
What would the time frame be?
The time frame? Yeah, I think you could do the entire process in less than, I think if you got really good, 3 to 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions for Dr. Farrell? If not, John, we would really like to thank you for all that you do and for all that Tibbs does to contribute to muskie science. it's so important for Muskies Inc. and Muskies Canada to be able to partner with you and share information back and forth, and to really have a great working relationship and good collaboration with the anglers that care so much about the resource. So thank you very much for that. Matt Wendell, if you're ready to go, I'll introduce you. Matt is our next speaker, and Matt Wendell is the program leader for research and technical services for the River Institute in Cornwall. And Matt has been working for a number of years on the fish identification nearshore survey. And one of the things that this survey has been able to do through collaboration is to start to have a look into the overall population of all species, but to keep an eye on Muskie Young of the Year on the Canadian side as well. That contributes to our sense of how are things going and what the issues are. So Matt, thank you and welcome. Over to you.
Thank you, Peter. Can you see the slide deck okay? I just want to confirm that.
Yep, it's up
Okay,
just fine.
great.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to everybody today. And, just listening to all of John's research there, it's really inspiring, actually. So this is a much smaller, reduced scale version of all the work that John's doing. But a lot of it actually is very inspired by. We've learned a lot from John as well. So I'll highlight some of that coming up in the talk. So yeah, today it's just a great opportunity just to share our ongoing research in the Canadian waters of the St. Lawrence River, and how that relates to tracking recruitment and muskellunge populations in the river. And that first photo there is just a really nice one. That's a new muskellunge site that we found in 2022. It's on Cornwall Island. So we have a lot of Akwesasne staff as well as River Institute staff sampling that site there. I'll just start by talking about the River Institute really quickly. The River Institute, we're a nonprofit research organization founded in 1994. And largely founded to address area of concern issues around Cornwall and the St. Lawrence River that had to do with contaminants being released from industrial activities over a century. So a lot of mercury and PCBs and other pollutants were released into the river and affected the ecosystem. And there's a lot of community questions and a lot of desire for a local source of information and research that could address those. So that was the reason that the Institute was founded. And since 1994, it's expanded to look at other ecological issues and research in the St. Lawrence River. And the mandate also includes education and outreach. So there's a huge component of what we do is translating science to the public, and people will come to us with questions, and we'll provide science talks, publicly available science talks, and try to communicate sort of more complex research and findings into easily understood or concepts that could really be matched really well with community questions. And the River Institute's a fairly small organization. We have a little over 30 staff, but that does include a lot of research with PhDs, master's degrees, and a lot of experience with education. So the River Institute, just to reiterate, is located in Cornwall, Ontario. So from 1994, I started at the River Institute in 2013, and in 2015, a couple of years after I started, just talking with this fellow here, Henry Lickers. Many of you might know him from the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne. Henry's now part of the IJC board. He, we're just in talks with Henry, and there was a lot of community questions about what the state of freshwater or small fish populations in the St. Lawrence River. A lot of focus is on the large adult sport fish in the area, and there's great index programs tracking that. But there wasn't a lot of knowledge or information or background information on small fish populations. And some of the local community members, they put out their trap nets, their little minnow nets, and they weren't catching as much, or they were noting some shifts in what they were catching. So that's how this project really started. Is it's this great partnership between the River Institute and the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne's Environment Program staff. And we came up with this name for the project, Fish Identification Nearshore Survey, or FINS for short. So you'll hear me refer to it as FINS from now on. And it's, started in 2015. We're 8 years on now, and it's been a great project. So we've really learned and expanded a lot in terms of what we're covering geographically, and also the types of research questions that we're addressing through the project. And it's resulted in really great capacity building for not only the River Institute, but the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne's Environment Program as well. So bringing in new technologies, having people trained up on different field methods has been great. We've made all kinds of great partnerships all up and down the river with other organizations and agencies doing similar research or interested in the same type of research. You can see the top photo there, that's some Queen's University students with our crew out sampling, and they're helping us do some genetic and eDNA research with the sampling that we're doing. Then the center photo there, you can see a lot of staff from Akwesasne's Environment Program out with our team sampling around Akwesasne. We have a lot of sampling effort in the area. It's historically very data deficient, so we're filling in a lot of new data gaps there. And then the bottom there, one of our technicians are holding some fish at that muskellunge site I was showing at the beginning. I'll just go over quickly what the FINS project involves. So one of the main, as I mentioned, one of the main focuses and objectives is to document nearshore fish populations. And this is really translated into tracking a lot of species at risk as well, in particular pugnose shiner, but also bridle shiner, cutlet minnow throughout the river as well. So we've received quite a bit of funding from government agencies to do that type of species at risk focus. But while you're out there doing that, you can also focus on other species, and young of the year muskellunge has been a really nice bonus species that we could study through this type of funding. You saw through John's talk there, the seining technique. So that's what we use. We have beach seines, and that type, this is a 30-foot net. But right at the beginning of the project, we had the opportunity to go visit John at Tibbs and learn about their sampling methods. And this 30-foot net is modeled after the net that we saw them using at the time. So I really appreciate that help with that kind of coming up with the methodology. We also have a 60-foot net as well, but we tend to use the 30-foot net for most of our sites. At each one of our sites, we also do a standardized aquatic vegetation survey. So aquatic vegetation is really important for structuring fish communities that you see, and also helps track some new invasive species as well. So we haven't seen water soldier yet, but we do see quite a bit of invasive Eurasian milfoil at a lot of our sites, and there seems to be some impacts on fish communities when you find really dense stands of that. All of our sites too, we're looking at water quality, so that could be simple as water clarity, but we're also taking samples to look at nutrient levels, so phosphorus and nitrates, for example, which drive algal blooms and potentially affect oxygen levels in really shallow warm waters of the river. We're also noting what types of substrates are out there, shoreline characteristics as well. Natural versus developed is really nice to communicate if you do find really nice muskellunge nursery sites, whether or not they have natural shorelines, for example. So much of the upper St. Lawrence River is developed shoreline, privately owned, with hardened shorelines or modified shorelines. And so there's quite a bit of impact to habitat immediately close to the shorelines where some nurseries might occur. So it's an important factor to track as well. Several years ago, we started using drones as part of our surveys as well. So we'll put a drone up in the air and we'll get really high resolution aerial imagery of our site. And we take hundreds of photos, sometimes thousands of a site, and we stitch those all together into a single map. And that's a really nice record of what the site looked like on that day. And you can revisit that map afterwards, that imagery, and have a really close look at habitat characteristics, distribution of aquatic vegetation, for example, is really important. And we're now getting into analyzing that imagery and trying to tease out if we can tell certain types, groups of species of plants, for example, that'll really just help us improve our aquatic vegetation survey coverage. So really neat things we're doing with the drones, and you know, the simplest thing it can do is just give you a really quick, nice high resolution image of your site, and you can use that to track changes over time as well. So it could be flood years, could be developing shorelines from property development, things like that over time. We also recently have started collecting environmental DNA or eDNA samples at all of our sites. We started this in earnest back in 2020, and it's going really well now. And this is just another new tool, and you heard John mention that as well. It's a great tool to supplement with conventional methods of catching fish, where you can potentially scoop up and amplify free-floating DNA in the water column, and then look at that DNA, sequence it, and target species within that amplified DNA sample. Potentially muskellunge could be found this way as well. Our project, it's 8 years on now, so we're developing long-term monitoring sites, and nowhere near the scale that John has or other programs in the Thousand Islands, but you have to start somewhere. So we're some of our sites now, we have 8 years of data, and we're doing our best to put together funding and collaborations to keep that going well into the future. And in particular, a lot of the focal sites of our long-term monitoring are these muskellunge nursery sites. This project is really great too. It's just informing lots of other community questions and issues and other initiatives. We have a really large program, another project that another colleague of mine leads at the River Institute called the River Report, that's putting together essentially summaries of ecosystem indicators that the community has identified, and several of those are fish indicators. Others can be related to bird or water quality, contaminants, things like that. So the data from the FINS project feeds into this larger ecosystem indicator project. And we also are able to use our data set to answer questions from the public. For example, the ecological impacts of fluctuating water levels, which we've seen. I have a couple figures, photos coming up to show you. Pretty drastic impacts of that. And there is some community concerns that, so when we go to a site and we sample fish communities, we're able to note if there's any changes year to year because of those water level conditions, for example. This project's been fantastic to work collaboratively with other organizations, and you can see some people squinting into a fish viewer there. One pointing, there's Stafford and Bojan from Queen's University. So they're very much lab-based biologists, or they were at the start of this. So they very good in molecular methods, but the fish species, they couldn't actually identify a fish that they were identifying through molecular methods. So it's been a great partnership to bring them out into the field. We essentially do the fish collections and provide tissue samples and environmental DNA samples to collaborators like Stafford and Bojan, who then take that information and run with it essentially in the lab and provide some other perspectives on what was going on at the site. The project's also been really fantastic for providing these unique high-level training opportunities, in particular for young professionals. There's not a lot of opportunities like this. You really have to go to university, graduate level education to receive that. But once you go in the job market, you might find a little bit of slim pickings essentially for some of these opportunities. So it's been a really nice thing to see and help a lot of young professionals grow in their careers. We've had over 60 people pass through the project at various stages and receive this kind of high-level training. And it's been really nice to see them go on and use these skills to acquire jobs and continue research in other areas. So I'll move into, that's a little summary of the project methodologies. So I'll move now into some of our survey efforts in 2022 last year. So that would have been our 8th year of the project. And we had 30 crew and volunteer total. So it's a big effort to a lot of people when you consider that the River Institute is only 30 people. To have this many people on a single project, it's been great. And our focus, we have a lot of focus in Akwesasne. So there's a lot of sampling at sites there, and we're trying to develop long-term sites to help the environment program there track changes over time. And we've also expanded into other First Nations territories. So Ganawage and Lac Saint Louis has been a great partnership where we've been sampling with them for the last 2 years. And last year we also went into Tyendinaga down in the Bay of Quinte area, and we're sampling sites there as well. So really expanding the geographic scope and partnerships with Indigenous organizations has been great. Another great collaboration we have had, the first one we did with the Thousand Islands National Park staff, and you can see probably a lot of you recognize Josh, super tall Josh there standing out of the water in the top image there. And Rob McRae is out in the photo there as well. So we were out sampling with them this summer in August. And that was a follow-up to 6 years ago. We actually went sampling them with them for the first time. And so it was a nice return to that. And it was a great day. We didn't find any muskellunge wildlife that day, but we did find quite a few northern pike juveniles. So really nice to continue with that collaboration and share data and coordinate sampling in the Thousand Islands in particular. Another really neat collaborator that showed up last year was, I don't know if any of you have ever met Erling Holm from the Royal Ontario Museum's fish identification workshops. Erling's been running those for decades, and quite a few of our staff have been through those just to help boost our fish ID skill sets over the years. They're just kind of world-class workshops. So to have Erling join us last year was really special, and actually see all the training he helped translate to actual project results and jobs. So that was really special, and that was in August last year. And I think we've hooked him, so he wants to come back again this in 2023. This map here, you can see this shows the distribution of our sampling effort in the Upper St. Lawrence River, and a lot going on in terms of points here. Hopefully that's coming across on your screens. All the green dots, all the green points represent survey sites over the years from 2015 to 2022. And the red dots are ones that we sampled in 2022. So a lot of those are repeat sites. Most of them actually in 2022 are repeat sites. And you can see that, over the years, we kind of alternate, and we have, as John mentioned, sometimes you have sentinel sites and sometimes or index sites. And then we also have quite a few roving sites that we might sample for other project objectives, such as looking for other species at risk, for example. So the majority of the sampling for this project last year happened in July and August, and mostly in August. And we actually didn't do a lot of sampling in the Quebec waters. So it's Lake St. Francis and downstream into Lac Saint Louis last year, because the MFFP, the ministry in Quebec, did a large scale nearshore seining program last year. They do one about every 5 years or so. So that geographic area was being covered by them already. So we focused on other areas last year. Overall, this is just some kind of stats from the last 8 years. We have over 230 sites in the river, 600 surveys. Each survey is a minimum of 3 hauls. So it's a lot of effort there. I think we'll probably get over 200,000 fish this year when we keep going, but lots of species. We have over 100 eDNA and drone survey, there's a little typo there, drone survey sites as well. And then thousands of habitat measurements associated with all these sites. Last year, we did environmental DNA sampling at all of our sites. So at 50 sites roughly there, and you can see in the bottom photo there, actually, you can see, I'll just back up here. You can see this filter that's being shown here. So water's passed through sterilized tubing into this filter holder here, and it's pushed against this really fine mesh filter. It's actually only 1 micron. So it essentially looks like a piece of plastic. And any bits of DNA that are floating in the water actually get stuck to that filter. And then it's carefully folded, as you can see here, and placed in a buffer. And then we put that in cold storage and freezers, and that can be maintained for PCR amplification for years, essentially. So we sample eDNA at all of our sites, and the way that works is you take a water bottle sterilized, you do several, collect 1 liter samples throughout the site. Those are a little bit subsurface. So it's interesting that this is kind of a emerging area in terms of what the best sampling protocol is. So we're working on that as well. And I'm interested to talk to John about some of their successes with sampling methods with eDNA. But you can see in the bottom picture here, there's Lizzie doing, we filter all the sites on the samples on site. So that easy flow peristaltic pump you can see set up there pushes water through this filter, and then we preserve it immediately on site. So there's no deterioration of the DNA sample. And on the top photo there, you can see Emma, who was part of a week-long journey on the Lampsilus vessel, which began in Lake Ontario and went all the way to the Gulf of St. Lawrence. And she essentially went to the end of the upper St. Lawrence River. But that was a great opportunity to collect eDNA samples in the center channel of the river, because typically we're collecting in the nearshore areas. So it was a great opportunity to compare offshore versus nearshore fish signals, and that might help us interpret a little bit what we're seeing in the nearshore areas. So we've done a lot of training of our staff to be able to do this environmental DNA sampling, as well as processing the samples and then sequencing them. So there's been a lot of effort there with workshops, and we've also done a lot of work to acquire primers and probes that are essentially unique signatures for species that we can match up with our samples and see what shows up. So a lot of this eDNA work has been a great collaboration with Dr. Stephen Lougheed's lab at Queen's University and his grad students. And you can see Stafford there showing some of our staff how to do some of the qPCR amplification, I believe they're doing that. And Dr. Oriane Tournier from France also has been a great help with that regard. And Stafford and Oriane, as part of Stafford's PhD, he actually took all of our 2021 eDNA samples and ran metabarcoding. So it's essentially you isolate the fish signal of the DNA lump that was filtered out of the water column, and then you sequence all of it, and you see how many species of fish show up in that. And you need really powerful supercomputers to do this, and it takes a little bit of time and quite an expensive equipment that we don't have at the River Institutes. This is a great example of this, what happens when you partner up with people and we provide the samples in it, and then they do the lab components. And this is a really interesting, so this figure here, this is the metabarcoding results. And there's a lot of blue dots here. So the way to interpret this is that every single one of those blue dots is a hit for a species at a site. And on the left, you can see the hits for eDNA. And on the right, at the exact same sites, you can see what fish were actually captured through conventional seining methods. And a lot more showing up in the eDNA, essentially, is a take-home message here. Particularly for some species that are very rarely caught in the seining, for example, common carp, very sensitive vibrations in the water, they scatter pretty quickly, but eDNA picks them up at almost all of our sites. So they're there, we're just not catching them. So it's a great example of how eDNA can show presence absence at sites. There are some limitations with this and interpretations as well. We're not quite sure the residency time of the eDNA in the water column. It is a large river system, so there's a lot of flowing water. So there's some interpretation needed on whether a signal originates upstream or locally. But it's really interesting to see these presence absence results for so many species. And we end up finding quite a few more species through eDNA screening, as well as species at risk. But we want to talk about YOI muskellunge, and essentially the screening from the 2021 sampling for metabarcoding, we only found 3 sites out of the over 50 sites we submitted for the analyses. Only 3 had hits for muskellunge. And the interesting thing is in 2021, we only found 1 young of the year muskellunge in all of our surveys, and eDNA did not correspond, the hit for eDNA did not correspond to the site where we actually caught the young of the year muskellunge. So there's a little bit of a mismatch there. And then if we look at where the 3 sites were only one of those are known as historical muskellunge nursery sites. So this is where we're getting into a little bit of interpretation fun with some of these results. I'm hoping that our qPCR analysis of our eDNA samples from 2021 and 2022 will be a little more revealing than what the metabarcoding results showed. On that front, we made the River Institute made a really exciting purchase last year through some great donations from several organizations. So we now have a qPCR unit, and we're doing lots of training actually coming up later this month on lab procedures and protocols and how to use that. We've been collaborating for several years with Queen's University and essentially outsourcing our lab analyses to them. So this is a really nice new exciting phase where we can do all this analysis, or a lot of it, in-house at the River Institute now, which is great. Switching to drones, we do drone surveys at all of our sites as well, and they yield these really nice results. So this is one of our sites where we actually caught 3 young of the year muskellunge last year. And if you look carefully through the image, this map actually is made up of many different images that are blended together, stitched together in software. But if you look at the slightly offshore, you can see the trail actually where the seining crew walked through that vegetation patch and scooped up the fish in the seines in 3 hauls. And then you can see, essentially you can match up where the fish was caught with the exact locations in this imagery, because we GPS waypoint everything as well on the ground. So this is just a really powerful tool to show the distribution of aquatic beds, macrophyte beds, vegetation beds in relation to where we're catching the fish. And one of the neat things we're working on right now is taking that imagery and actually trying to classify objects in that imagery, and in this case, types of vegetation. And we use the standardized vegetation quadrat surveys we're doing, where we just put a 1 meter square quadrat in the water, and along transects, we count up the proportion of all the species that fall within that. So we're ground truthing areas of it, and we can actually then tell the software, the GIS software we're using, this particular square of this image corresponds to this species, classify the rest of the image based on that information. And you get things like this, where all the yellow parts of that image there correspond to yellow pond lily, and the green areas, it's being interpreted as being this charo species, which is a ground cover, essentially underwater algae that's very prolific and important fish habitat. So this is a really neat thing we're working on. There's a lot of trial and error. Things like shadows and wave action can really impact the classification accuracy of the imagery, but it has a lot of applications for other habitat features as well. So woody debris, bottom substrates, sizes as well. So we can classify rock sizes out of this as well. And getting into the results from last year. So we caught in that 50 sites throughout the year, mostly in July and August, extending all the way from Bay of Quinte all the way down to Lac Saint Louis. We caught 40 species, and most of that's from 9 species, and this is pretty typical every year. It's really dominated by 9 or 10 species. Then you have a handful of fairly rare species mixed in there. So I've listed here, anyone that's done seining in the St. Lawrence River will recognize all these as pretty typical, abundant nearshore species. Unfortunately, the round goby on the bottom right there is one of the more abundant species in the survey. We also note species at risk. Last year we documented 3. Pug-nosed shiner has been a focus of our project. The great thing about pug-nosed shiner is that they tend to prefer very similar habitat conditions to young of the year muskellunge nursery sites. So there's a nice overlap there, where we tend to find them at the same sites. You can see a bottom right picture there. That's the cutlet minnow, the little fish that picks the eyes out of larger fish. If you ever find those, you might be close to a cutlet site. One thing to note too is that there's a new, and this is a work that we've collaborated with John Farrell on. The essentially invasion of tube-nosed goby, which is related to the round goby from the same, they originate from the same area in the Ponto-Caspian area. Much slower rate of distribution increase throughout the Great Lakes compared to the round goby, but they've essentially finally made it into the Upper St. Lawrence River. Back, I think 2011 was the first sighting, and then really in 2016 they started to show up in larger numbers in the Thousand Islands. And through our surveys on the Canadian side, at least, we've noted that they've really expanded downstream. And on the top right map there in 2018, you can see those green stars show where we found this tube-nosed goby in the Thousand Islands. And all the red dots are locations that were surveyed that year, but no tube-nosed were caught. And then in 2022, last year, you can see all the green stars show where the tube-nosed was caught. So really, essentially almost all the sites we go to now have a really high probability of finding tube-nosed all the way down. And the Quebec surveys, nearshore surveys last year found tube-nosed in Quebec waters for the first time as well. So they've definitely expanded.
Matt, we're losing the audio, so we'll just check on that, okay?
Like somebody might have to put another quarter in Matt. Peter, are you getting anything there at all?
Steve McNevin here, Brian. I don't have anything from him.
Okay.
Not hearing him at all.
And Peter, are you you're muted right now?
Yeah, no, we're not. We just lost the audio on Matt there, so I'll see if I can get hold of him.
All right. Coffee break.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know if the guys on the water are getting anything.
He's
Well, we'll give him a minute. I'd like to think that Matt's still yammering on here without any awareness that that any of us are not hearing him. So we'll have to wrestle him up. So Peter's working on that. Good time to refill a coffee cup.
Yeah, I just texted Matt, so we'll see if we can get it back up.
Yeah, I'll give him a phone call.
He says he's so sorry his computer screen just went black, so he's working on it.
Okay.
Peter, do we know if he got kicked out of the entire call or is he still
Yeah, I think he's off the call completely. He's just said, I'm not sure what happened, but it may take some time to get back online. Okay, so he's offline completely. He's just had some sort of issue there. He's got to restart his laptop, so it will take a couple of minutes for that to be able to.
worst case scenario, he can send us a fax of his presentation.
Yep.
Five-minute break there, Brian.
Yeah, he said it might be about 3 to 5 minutes. I wonder in the meantime, while we're waiting, Steve McNevin, if you might want to put in a little plug for the consultation that is up right now on the environmental registry related to possible changes in muskie regulations for Ontario. Did you want to just say a word or two about that?
Yeah, Brian, sure. So, yeah, or sorry, Peter. If you want to send that out to people here today, you're more than welcome to send the link to that, of course, right? But Brian, I'm not even familiar, or sorry, Peter, when does it close? Do you know, or
It
I don't
closes
have.
on April 21st.
Okay, so what Peter's referring to is there's up on the environmental registry, there's some new regulation proposals around catch and release legislation in the Ontario fishing regulations. And that's associated with like the broader provincial look at just the wording around catch and release. Right now, the way the legislation's worded, you can't technically take a picture of a fish that has no allowable harvest. So in the example of muskellunge, if the fish was under, what are we, 137 centimeters? Am I saying that right, Pete?
Yeah.
If the fish was under that and there's no allowable harvest on that fish, you're not supposed to be taking those, like, you know, glory shots of the fish, right? So we're trying to work with policy folks and get that legislation changed. We're in a more modern world now. Everyone's got phones on, everyone's taking great photos of fish without harming them. And so we want to have that legislation streamlined so individuals are able to capture a shot of a fish and still release it safely and not be criminals, right? So so they're looking at that. Pete, I don't know, I don't have it right in front of me, but
I've got it here, so I'll read it out. The proposed changes would be to change the wording so that it would allow anglers to delay the release of a fish caught during the open season for that species only long enough to photograph, measure, and weigh if the fish is of restricted size or over the daily catch and possession limits, and to require the immediate release of fish that are out of season, a species at risk, or otherwise prohibited. So in other words, if it's a species that's in season, but it's undersized, you would be able to take a photo. And then weigh it if you need to, and then immediate release after that. So this is a really important issue related to those areas like the Upper St. Lawrence and other water bodies where we've advocated a lot to be able to have higher minimum size limits to protect the fishery, but it means the likelihood of catching an actual legal fish it may be limited. So on the St. Lawrence, if you get an over 50 but under 54, it's still a fish that is not subject to being able to be photographed technically. So this is a really good common sense rule change. And, I think everybody in Muskies Canada knows the importance of catch photo release as an alternative to catch and kill or take the fish home or handle it improperly or whatever. So really good that the ministry is doing a consultation on this. It's always a long process to change regulations, but anybody that would like to comment on this, go to the Ontario Environmental Registry or just Google
Colin just put it in the
Ontario
link.
Ministry regulation changes, and that'll bring you there.
Colin just put the link in the chat too, Peter, for us there.
Super.
So you can click on that and that'll take you, and you can provide comment or feedback on that. Yeah, but the one main thing still will be, Peter, that is if the fish is out of season. For example, if you were out fishing pike when it opens up and you were to catch a bass and that bass is out of season, you still aren't able to take a picture of that fish. It has to be immediately released. But if we have an open season, but there's no allowable harvest, like you say, on some of the undersized muskie and such, right now, even with zone 20, we have an early bass season, catch and release. Technically right now with that season, you cannot catch that fish and take a picture of it and release it because there's no allowable harvest. This will allow that to happen.
Yeah,
Or
we just,
good if that.
while we're waiting, we just got word from Matt. There was just a brief power outage that he underwent, with the ice storm that we had. The hydro is a little bit questionable in Eastern Ontario at times, so he may be back in a moment. Yeah, thanks for that. Good work on the regulation changes. It's been in the works, I think, for quite some time, and it's an important process. So anybody in the angling community that would like to be able to visit and comment on that, it's good to be able to get input.
Yeah, great flag, Peter. Thank you.
Yep. Comment from Chris Purdy. Comments close 21st of April, 2023. So, well, in the meantime, I wonder if, while we're waiting for Matt to get back up on board, do we want to call on Colin to maybe get started with his presentation, and we can maybe finish with Matt towards the end. We'll just change the schedule up a little bit so that we're not losing anybody because we've got this temporary pause. How's that sound? Colin, do you want to come up?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, thanks.
I'll just mention, it hadn't occurred to me to bring this up, but John spoke about water soldier and the concern with that new invasive species. I think everyone's seeing the right screen there. I'll just mention we've been working really closely with Parks Canada and other agencies to track the movement of the species, the expansion, as John said, unfortunately into the upper Bay of Quinte. And there's a lot of work being done. Parks Canada has been working really hard up in the Trent Severn, and we've been collaborating very closely with them. So we're also doing some eDNA work that Matt spoke to, looking for fish is our main interest, but also expanding that into water soldier. There's drone work being done by Parks Canada. There's mechanical harvesting, chemical treatments. It's all on the table. So it's very much on the radar of our agency as well as a number of others, and a lot of work's being done. So yeah, it's a good mention there, John. If I'd thought of it, I could have incorporated it in my talk, but I just wanted to point that out. And I'll put this link in the chat, and you can look that up for yourself. There's some really good information there. Through the Invasive Species Center, which is located in Sault Ste. Marie. We provide some funding to that group as well. And there's some Ontario fact sheets. If you scroll down to the bottom of the page there, you can see a fact sheet for Ontario, including identification and some of the biology of the species. I will get on to the talk here. I'll just check. How's that look for folks?
Looks good, Colin.
Okay. I'll keep my camera on for the meantime until unless quality degrades or something. I think the bandwidth should be good. I came down to work to take the call. For some reason, I'm the only person here, so I've got the internet all to myself. So anyway, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation to speak today. Really excited about this program. And congratulations to John on the recognition. Very well deserved. So I'm going to give a quick overview here of our new program, the Spring Muskellunge Netting Program. I'll give you a very, very quick overview of last year's outcomes, results, and then a little bit about our planning that's going forward for this year. Just for those of you who don't know our work unit, we're with Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, specifically the Lake Ontario Management Unit, and we're located at Glenora. You can see at the center of the screen there, and then the inset photo is the building we're very fortunate to work at. Steve works here, as do I, and a whole lot of other colleagues with the lake unit. There's about 15 of us on permanent staff. Our numbers double right around now. Actually, we're starting to really gear up. It's exciting time to be here at the station. Lots of programs, lots of young technicians coming back to work and contract staff, and our numbers pretty much double. You can see some select photos there, some of the work we do, and then a staff photo there at the bottom on the Jack Christie, a new research vessel here at the station. Just a reminder, for Ontario anglers, you're well familiar with Zone 20. That's basically the area we manage, the fish communities and fisheries. So the Canadian side of Lake Ontario, as well as the St. Lawrence River. A little bit on last year's program, the spring survey. 2022, of course, was the first survey conducted by LOMU, specifically targeting adult muskellunge. It ran for 4 weeks, basically, as you can see there, the entire month of May, 15 total net nights. And our very simple goal is to get our hands as many fish as possible and kind of work the kinks out of this new program. I've spoken, I think, to many of you before. We've got a lot of experience here with this sort of entrapment gear, this sort of survey work, but it's the first time working in this area at this time of year. So there's some learning to do. We did catch muskellunge in week 1, week 2, and week 4. I'll just point out week 3 was the only week I wasn't out, so I'm pretty much convinced that I'm a good luck charm or something. So my plan is to be out for every week this coming year. So we'll see if that holds true. Kind of by the numbers, just a real quick overview there. You can see the 4 weeks. We use both hoop nets, some people call them fyke nets, as well as trap nets. And our trap nets, our 6-foot trap nets, are very similar to the ones that Dr. Farrell and his lab use, which is nice. So the data are pretty comparable. Our fishing effort is very comparable. And you can see there through the various weeks, the combination of both hoop and trap nets totaling 76 net nights. The hoop nets didn't catch any muskellunge. I'm not sure yet if we're going to use them this coming year. We may take a few. You can get hoop nets into pretty shallow sites that you can't otherwise get into with a trap net. So I haven't met yet with the technical staff, so I'm looking for their input and thoughts as well. Real quick summary by the numbers. You can see this is sorted by species. So the most abundant species we caught was rock bass. And you can see the breakdown between the hoop nets and the trap nets. Northern pike, quite abundant, nearly 300 of them caught. Muskellunge, you can see we caught 6 there. And just on the right-hand side, as anglers, temperature's one of the most important things you can measure when you're looking at fish abundance and distribution. And you can see working through May that the water was starting to warm up from about 7 degrees at the start to just over 12, close to 13 by the time we were done. And I've just plotted our pike catches there along the bottom and how they moved with temperature. So, the challenge here, we only have 1 year of data, so it's hard to draw a lot of conclusions, but we're really, really excited about getting out again this spring. John spoke to catch per unit effort, so I quickly threw that data in there too. And you can see, again, muskellunge, we didn't catch any in our hoop nets, but we did catch 6 in our trap nets. So our catch per unit effort is just above 0.1. Which I noted is kind of in the ballpark of some of the data that John saw. So, I think that's not too bad for a first year's effort. Just a reminder of how we pick some of our sites. Again, being the first year, it was a bit of a challenge deciding where to go. We do have this long-term data set that we've contributed to, other M&R staff, Thousand Islands National Park. This is the YOY muskellunge seining program. Muskies Canada was involved heavily in this in the mid-2000s and still remains involved to this day. So this is just a big map of all the sites where seines were done, and the colored circles correspond to a year when at least one YOY muskellunge was caught. So it gave us some place to start looking in terms of where we might want to set our trap nets. And our base of operation was Clark's Marina, so fairly central, just outside of Gananoque. They were really good to us. Our plans to go back there again this year and work out of the same location. So from that previous map of all the possible places we could go, here's the sites we tried. Some places we fished more intensively. We did get down to Wolf Island. You can see there down in the western end. That was a pretty long run. Really nice habitat. We didn't catch any muskellunge there, but I'm going to speak to our technical staff and get some input and see see what their thoughts are. We do have a couple spots where we did catch muskellunge, so we're kind of at that early stage. We don't have our index sites established yet. We're kind of still roving, so still more work to do, but really excited to get out. As I was saying to John, our technicians, they're pretty competitive, so I've got some new staff assigned to this project this year. Really excellent technicians, and they're determined to beat last year. Like so that's they want to do better than last year. So plans for 2023. First of all, our program is going to be extended by a week. So 5 weeks basically into early June. That's 19 net nights. We may go to 100% trap nets. Don't know yet. I don't want to get ahead of our technical staff's input. We still have to meet and do a startup meeting. As I said, we have a couple of go-to spots where we did have success last year, but we're going to continue to look for other sites. Perhaps it could become index sites. And as I mentioned, we're planning on working around Gananoque. Wolf Island's a bit of a long run. We're going to kind of wait and see. Weather obviously determines a lot of our decisions when we're out there. But the real goal here is to maximize the number of net nights, maximize our effort, and as I say, try and beat last year's numbers. John mentioned the telemetry work and the acoustic tags. So we've been in close contact with John, and we will be attempting to put some tags in fish this year. So excited about that, contributing to sort of the larger efforts going on. That's really all I've got. That's a photo of one of the fish we got last year swimming away, healthy and happy, or at least healthy. I don't know how happy it was, but it swam away nice and strong. So we're looking forward to another program this year and getting our hands on more fish. Any questions?
Colin, I'm interested in, we could send you a comparison of our like hoop versus Oneida type trap net catch. I was just looking at the data quick, and we picked up at least 2 of our 4 fish and hoop nets last year.
Okay.
So,
yep.
There's a lot of data. So if that would help in your decision, I kind of like the Oneidas, but it is nice to, when you get those low water years, it's sometimes tough to get Oneidas in, and we seem to do pretty well. But I have to take another look at if there's really like a difference. I think the biggest difference is the habitat that you are able to fish. So, but I could supply that if that would help you guys make a decision.
Absolutely, yeah, and I expect at the very least we'll probably take the gear with us. At least you've got it then on hand, and if we need it, we can run back and grab it. So, like I say, I haven't made any decisions yet. It's a team effort. So, that information would be great.
Cool. I'll try to do that for you.
They are a little quicker to fish and reset. So there's that too. It's not a huge commitment of time. So.
Yep. I think you got a hand up.
Hello.
Yeah, I have a question. Has there been any studies on deep water muskies, the ones that stay deep and spawn off shoals, as opposed to trapping the shallower running muskie?
Certainly, Dr. Farrell's done a lot of that work. I'm not going to answer for him. I'll just say the trap nets do fish to a certain depth. We can fish them a little deeper. The lead length is really what determines how far offshore you can get, and the site characteristics, sort of the slope and the depth. But we do record the depth of all of our nets, so I didn't present that here today. But I would say in general, we're probably certainly less than 20 feet depth, kind of at the box at the end where we're actually capturing the fish. But John, I'll let you speak to deep spawning fish.
Yeah, we've got some information on that. A long time ago, we did a study where we put out egg traps all over the bottom, and we included deep water, and we did detect deep water muskie spawning, but the vast majority of spawning was occurring probably less than 2 meters, meter and a half. So it's interesting to bring that up, because I was going to ask Colin about the northern pike, because where we do see excessive amounts of deep spawning is with northern pike, ironically. And that's a long story. We kind of found a relationship between habitat change and water levels that are promoting this deep water pike spawning, that we kind of have a hypothesis that it's maladaptive because it doesn't seem to produce a lot of young. So I was going to ask, if that answers the question, and ask Colin if he saw pike that were in spawning condition, throughout the muskie spawning period.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, John. Yeah, so we did record length, weight, and condition of all the pike we handled. So it's a really nice added bonus to this program. We are concerned about northern pike, as are a lot of other agencies. So we are gathering data on pike as well. We're not doing any tagging on them or marking, but certainly we've got all the data, and obviously we can share it with you, John.
Great, thank you. It's always surprised me how we get the bulk of our catches during the muskie. Like we have a near shore pike spawning index going on right now. It ran all week, and it's the catches have been really poor this year. And when we set the muskie nets, invariably we catch a lot more than we do during the tributary spawning index for pike, like in March and April.
Yeah,
and it seems to have shifted that way, so it's different. I think it's one of the changes in the river. So that's great you're getting that data.
Yeah, we don't. We have lots of other fisheries assessment programs. Some of them using trap nets. A lot of them are gill nets surveys, and it's not the best gear for sampling pike. We certainly get them, and we can make some inferences, over decades. But it's not what you'd use if pike was your main target. So, like I say, this is a really nice bonus to this program, is to getting a bit of a handle on what pike are doing. So.
Well, and you got another hand there. You also have a question in the chat too. I don't know if Brian wants to read that, or I can. Just around Canadian anglers participating in the tagging, and maybe what their contact is there, how we were doing that.
Yeah, so there were Canadians participating, John. I don't want to hand all the work over to you, but that's more in your ballpark there.
Yeah, so I guess that would be referring to the citizen science program that started last year, and Colin has been a big part of helping us be able to make that a binational effort. So that's what's really unique about that program. And so Canadian anglers were participating in angling or tagging muskellunge last year. And if people are, interested, they can reach out to us, and we can provide more information. And as I mentioned in my presentation, we'll probably be planning another workshop this summer. Does that answer your question, Bruce? And then, make pin tag readers available so purchase, contribute data. Yeah, so the kits include, we have 10 kits right now dedicated to Canada, and I think there's still some available, but we're kind of, making sure that we get, anglers that receive the training and that spend a significant time out there. And maybe they could, team up with anglers that have kits and training to check it out. So hopefully that helps answer your question, Bruce.
He says, yes, thanks there, John. And we have a hand up too. Who's got the hand? Go ahead there.
Yeah, it's just back a little to the actual habitat of the muskie. In historical muskie spawning grounds that no year the young have been found because of the droughts it suffered or shoreline development, and that's destroyed the proper weed growth and everything else that the muskies require. Is it possible to rehabilitate those historic spawning grounds?
I'm not as familiar with specifically with muskie restoration, but certainly there is instances where aquatic vegetation has been planted and there's been work done like that. It's generally far better to protect it before you lose it, of course. Now I know, again, to defer to Dr. Farrell's work, there's been a lot of work done in sort of embayments and shoreline, coastal marshes and things like that. To do some restoration. It's a big piece of work, though, to say the least.
Yeah, for sure. Just to add to that, I mean, I think the fry stocking program, we had a baseline that was established in the 1990s that was prior to round goby introduction. I think zebra mussels were just getting started, and a lot of the other river changes, and we had exceptional, it was a five-year study, and it included habitat, and that really serves as an important baseline. And now we're repeating that to kind of, not just help restore these lost spawning and nursery sites, but also kind of gauge the health of the habitat. And Matt, he gave a really nice overview of their very advanced assessment program and monitoring habitat. So there's a lot of people that are focused on it now. It's aquatic plants which provide the structure for the fish to use, but there's also like ecological fish community level things that have changed, like in the prey fish populations and the presence of gobies, and then the disease. The good news is we put these little tiny 25 millimeter muskies out in the river, and quite a number of them survived and did really well. The habitat's still functioning.
I just want to point out that we got Matt back. Welcome back, Matt. And I do want to make sure that we kind of get through your presentation. We got about half an hour left in the program. So if you could probably conclude yours, and then we'd use remaining time for questions, if that makes sense, Peter.
Sounds good.
Peter's in
My
agreement.
apologies too. We've lost power where I am, so issues happening here. I keep coming in and out. Matt, glad to have you back. Thank you.
Yeah, I apologize for that, sir. It's there's just a little power outage here that just rebooted everything, so it's a little slow getting back online. So glad there's still time to talk about the muskellunge highlights, actually. And Colin, I'm sorry I missed your presentation there, so maybe I can catch up on it on the recording afterwards, because I was really keen to see some of those results and discussions as well. Right, so we were kind of left off here. I was talking about some of the background fish community catches we had from 2022. The nice thing to report is we're not finding anywhere near the numbers that Tibbs is finding in 1,000 Islands, but we did find a record number for our project last year, which is a nice sign. It's a nice trend. We found 7 young of the year muskellunge across the sites, and then I'll show some pictures of some additional ones as well. And through actually a donation from Muskies Canada, we did acquire a new pit tag scanner, and just being aware of the fall release of the juveniles, we were tagging larger, or not tagging, sorry, we were scanning larger individuals for pit tags, just as a curious thing, but we didn't find any, unfortunately, but that would have been maybe unusual to see some move across the river from the US sites to the Canadian sites, but it's something we'll continue to do, just with the thousands of fish out there now with the tags. It's definitely a good idea to continue to monitor that. Yeah, so it was a great year for us, actually, because in 2021 we only found one young of the year muskellunge, so it's they remain very rare across all the sites. So last year we revisited 9 sites where we'd previously found young of the year muskellunge, and of the 9, one site did yield 1 individual, and then we had 4 new nursery sites discovered through other sites last year as well. And in addition to the FINS project surveys, as I mentioned, the River Institute does lots of other research on the river, including contaminant surveys and analyses of fish communities, particular sport fish. And through some of that survey work in the fall, an additional 3 YOI were found, some larger individuals, and those were all clustered around Cornwall. So there's some new sites there as well, which is great. And that kind of extended past the usual end date of our FINS project. So it was kind of nice to see some larger individuals documented through that program. See some photos of them right there. And again, scanned and no pit tags found. A really interesting thing to note is that the fish community is really tends to be higher diversity, more species at nursery sites for muskellunge compared to other sites across the river. So that's really nice. It includes co-occurring species at risk, such as a pugnose. Unfortunately, it also includes co-occurring brown goby at almost all the sites. We also found tube-nosed goby at several of the sites as well, that new invader in the river. And you can see the fish viewer there with a nice diversity of fish there, typical of a muskellunge site. This survey, actually the one I'm holding the viewer here, this is right next to the River Institute, so we had to travel about 50 feet to go catch that muskellunge, which is a great cost effort for that survey. John was mentioning others, I'm sure Colin probably did as well. The issue last year, and actually in 2021 as well, just low water levels continue to be having impacts on some of these nursery sites. So this site you can see here, the huge extent of the bottom of the river is exposed here, and this is actually a nursery site where we've documented YOI muskellunge in the past. So we didn't document any at this location in 2022. We did do the survey a little further out in deeper waters, but it still just goes to show the impacts of low water levels, both in terms of reducing the amount of nursery habitat, but also just altering the quality of it too, because it's shallower. It warms up more quickly, so it changes the thermal regime of the nursery a little bit as well. And this just shows that this is from the IJC water levels website, where you can see 2021 and 2022 highlighted here, and sort of near the record low levels documented for Lake St. Lawrence those 2 years. So especially extending into July and August, it was really, really low. Over the course of the last 8 years, our FINS project has documented a total of 26. So again, nowhere near the hundreds documented in the Thousand Islands by TIBS and Parks Canada, but they're very rare essentially in the Canadian waters. And this just goes to show the ongoing issues with improvement. So we've documented a total of 17 nursery sites, and that's out of 230 sites sampled across the upper St. Lawrence River and into Lake Ontario. And this just shows the numbers over time. So we did have a slight bump in 2022. 2021 was very poor showing though for IOI. So there's this fluctuation over time. And this map here showing all of our nursery sites from 2017 to 2022, and they're just represented by those stars there. So green stars are prior ones, and then red stars are ones that were actually confirmed in 2022. And the black dots are just all the sampling sites over the years. Key things, and this just confirms what a lot of other research has shown, that John and other researchers, in terms of the habitat characteristics preferred by young of the year. It's clear water, heavily vegetated, and in particular certain species of aquatic vegetation, such as Valsinaria, also known as tape grass or wild celery. They tend to really like that, and at the sites we found them, at least. And you can really see why in this underwater picture. They really blend in with that type of vegetation, or ideally camouflage, in particular from above. They just look like another piece of tape grass, essentially. But clear water as well, and sandy bottoms, and these characteristics are favored by several species of risk, including pug-nosed shiner too. So it really goes to show the importance of documenting and protecting these nursery habitats because of the rich biodiversity, species of risk, and also just acting as nurseries for muskellunge. Something to note too, we have, out of our 17 sites, only 3 of them have ever been multi-year survey successes. And that, we visit sites on a yearly basis, many of them, and only a handful, actually, we have confirmed only 3 finding muskellunge across years. And the sites that are highlighted there are just ones that we've added in 2022, those 4 new ones. So those were all sites that we've previously been visiting. So it just goes to show it really pays to return to the same sites if you believe that it's good conditions for muskellunge nursery. Even if you don't find them one year, it doesn't mean that you won't find them in a subsequent year of surveys. I also wanted to go over some of our northern pike highlights too, just another sausage finding. So we only found 12 last year. It was a little bit of a low number, and that was from 9 sites. Those were all previously documented nursery sites for young of the year pike. And this is some, over the years, some stats here. So we've documented 45 sites where we found young of the year northern pike, and the majority of those are wetlands. So that's in contrast to the muskellunge nursery sites, which tend to be non-wetland sites. And the neat thing about the wetland sites, we've done some recent research with some collaborators in Quebec on this, is that they're showing resilience and to the invasion by round gobies. So they end up being these refuges of habitat where round gobies tend not to invade, and it's a combination, it's thought, of the water conditions and the habitat conditions in wetlands are just not favorable for round gobies. So that's a good thing. Another really good reason to protect wetlands for northern pike nurseries. And this is just our catch distribution over the years, showing this decline over the years in our northern pike YOY catches, fortunately. And lots of nursery sites. This is the same map of our sampling area, and you can see all those green stars show all the northern pike nursery sites. So quite extensive, and they tend to match up really well with wetland complexes throughout the river. Grass pickerel, we've barely caught any in our 8 years, and all the fish we've caught, we've only found them at 5 wetland sites, and we didn't find any last year either. So they're extremely rare. I'm curious to know if others have better success at catching them, even if we go to sites where it looks like perfect grass pickerel habitat, we tend to have trouble finding them. And our eDNA results are also not picking them up very well either, unfortunately. So they're elusive on several fronts. What I'll do is just wrap up by talking about our next phase. So our overall objectives of the project, we really want to start including these emergent technologies such as eDNA and drones more and more. And we're using this to understand a lot of these climate change impacts that are happening. So water level fluctuations, temperature, this all is combined with other stressors such as new invasive species, could be fish, could be aquatic vegetation, viruses, just documenting trends over time in the fish community in relation to really accurately documenting the habitats and communities that they inhabit. We're really about building capacity at the River Suit and the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne in terms of training young professionals to use all these new tools. Much the same way I know John's trained generations of graduate students as well that have done great great accomplishments, and we're doing that on a much smaller scale, but it's really nice to see that capacity being built. And just really working with as many partners and collaborators as we can. We relied on Queen's University for the environmental DNA processing essentially for 2 years, and now we're moving into a position where we can do that ourselves. All this information too goes to government agencies. We do feed into, people request data from us all the time if they're looking for species distributions or information. We're very happy to provide that as well. And as I mentioned at the beginning, a really big mandate at the River Institute is communicating science to the public and answering questions. So we're trying to use this data set to do that as well. In terms of specific muskellunge research objectives for this coming year, this field season, we're in the fun part of the year in field planning mode, and we're going to be revisiting nursery sites that are known and confirmed, and we're going to be again applying eDNA and sampling as well to those sites, and we're going to be trying several new locations that have been reported from community members as potential nursery habitats in the Akwesasne area. We'll be doing a little more intense sampling in the Lake St. Francis Akwesasne area this year, and really monitoring that spread of the new invasive tube-nosed goby as well. We have this kind of 8 years of baseline research of these habitats, and many of them, just last year, the tube-nosed started to move in. So we're going to start probably to see some changes if there are changes, and we'll be able to compare that to what was there before because we have the baseline information. Really, it's been a great project for research collaboration. I just listed a lot of universities here. Of course, John's here as well. Queen's University is a big partner on this project. We've done some interesting partnerships with Toronto, University of Toronto, where they're using drones to collect water samples offshore, collect environmental DNA samples. So pretty cool. So you don't have to put a boat in the water, or you can access more difficult conditions, essentially habitats, using these types of new tools. So that's really neat. Collaborating with some people at McGill University on tube-nosed and round goby distributions and effects of thermal regimes on those. And of course, sampling with the University of Quebec at Trois-Rivières on the Lampsilus voyage last year. And we'll likely try to do that again this year with sampling the main channel of the river with environmental DNA samples. A big one too, of course, I can't forget, is Parks Canada. So we love collaborating with folks there in Thousand Islands, and with Muskies Canada staff as well every summer. So we'll try to set that up again this year. Really grateful for all the funding support over the years. As I mentioned, we're a nonprofit research institute. So a big part of my job is writing research grants, and really grateful to all the support we've received over the years, in particular from Muskies Canada. Some recent funding from them, so it's gone a long way for us to support the research we're doing, as well as a nice donation from the Muskie Symposium last year as well. This was really appreciated. I just want to show some photos here too. It's there's a lot of help along the way too from folks. We visited John Farrell and the Tibbs station back in 2016 and learned a lot from that experience and how to design our methods, and just to learn a lot about setting up a project. And the bottom right, of course, you can see Josh Van Weeren and Rob McRae, regular collaborators out in the field. And Peter, you're in that photo. That was a 2016 little jaunt out on your boat there. I think it was a November trip, but just lots of support over the years. People on this call, John Anderson, I think I saw Lisa there too. Just really nice to have that support, and Dav and you as well. I've probably forgotten lots of people. Colin, of course, is great at helping us as well with the project. Really interested to hear from people. We do our best to try to find new nursery habitats through sampling, but if people in particular have ideas about where a good site would be to sample, we'd love to hear that from you, and we can go confirm that with some of our survey work as well. I've listed some my contact information there. You can also follow us on social media, and we also have a website too. You can check out with some story maps that are kind of interactive and showing some nice visuals of the project. So thank you, everybody, and sorry again for that disruption in the presentation. Hopefully no one else had lost power there, but happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I'm not seeing questions in the chat. It's Brian here. We lost Peter along the way, so Peter also got bounced. We're going to try to get him back in. If you've got questions, you know, feel free to just go on mic, raise your hand, or enter it in the chat, and we'll try to catch it.
Sure.
And I'm not seeing
I've
it.
got questions, Matt. I was just waiting to
Go
say that. So this is John. Yeah, it was really, you know, that's awesome data, that comparison of your fish community from seine and catch to eDNA, with the work you guys have been doing. So it's, but it was interesting on that small data point on the muskellunge. You know, it's interesting how we had detections, and I think it was 10 out of 11. We only did our 11 index sites, and then you guys found only a few sites, and then you had the one misdetection. I just wondered what you think's going on with that.
It's a good question, right? You know, if it's only small individual YOI in the area, and if they're really low density, it could just be that the water sample is just, you know, they're spread out enough that the DNA isn't being captured in that sampling. The way we do it is we take 3 triplicate samples at a site that are spread out, spatially spread out. So we try to kind of hedge our bet a little bit in terms of covering the area of the site with the sampling. But yeah, I don't know. I know, you know, from earlier presentations, you've had much better luck in documenting, confirming the known sites with eDNA. So it's been we're in the process right now of running all of our 2021 and 2022 samples through our new qPCR unit. So I'm wondering if that gives us a little bit better accuracy or better hits essentially on the DNA versus the metabar coding, which is, you know, it's great to show the community blast results that way, but maybe not as good for specific species detections. From what I understand, you know, it's a new tool that I'm learning more about, but yeah, I think that could be something that we get better results using the qPCR.
Yeah, thanks. You know, one difference is our data was collected during spawning, so it focuses on adults, you know, so maybe that's part of it too. The adults obviously contain a lot more DNA, and and there's probably differences in the water characteristics then too. But yeah, you know, if you want to follow up sometime, I'd be interested.
Yeah. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, an interesting study at some of your sites might be regular sampling over the course of the season, starting in spawning season, and then seeing how that signal, maybe if it stays strong or if it does fade over time.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, that it's great. You have continuity with this, and, you know, we kind of sometimes do like a technological advancement through like a study or a project, but then, you know, it's harder to implement it into your, you know, monitoring program to continue it. So I don't think we have any eDNA work planned this year, for instance. So
okay.
Unfortunately, but so if you guys want to collaborate on anything, you know, since you guys are investing into the future of it, you know, let me know, because we have crews on the water, and we could send you filters or, you know, something like that to run.
That would be fantastic. Yeah, that'd be great.
Something we can talk about. You know, our samples, we weren't able to like amplify them to quantify the, the number of reads and stuff like that, but they were positive detections, but there wasn't enough material to amplify it. So
Okay.
that's about as far as we went. We just had a paper come out on the method last month.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, I saw that. It was a great paper. Yep.
Yep, thanks.
I had a question for you, John, on the stocking of the fingerlings.
Yep.
It seems like a great way to overcome the potential, limiting factor on recruitment from round goby predation on eggs. You kind of skip over that step a little bit by. I'm just wondering, do you have a sense of how much round gobies are potentially,
Yeah, that's a really
limiting recruitment?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And like all we have is that experimental study where we put in a really large, I think it was 10 feet long and 20, in English, 10 feet long and 2 feet wide tank. And then we filled it with different substrates. And we put I think it was 30 eggs in something that large. And then we put one goby in there. And we couldn't believe, like, even in complex vegetation, 50% of the eggs were found in 24 hours in the goby, and if there was less complex substrates, it was 100%. So but we weren't able to, we need to do a field study. So it kind of was done in the lab. We were amazed at how they could sniff out the eggs. We have done field studies with, nest building species and had a lot of success with that. And, we found that there was also an assemblage of native species that eat eggs quite readily, so it's like there was a question of whether gobies were, replacing or additive in terms of egg predation in the natural environment. And then you can go to things like, isotopes and other measures like that, but we really need to do a field study. We've noticed that I used to do that egg trapping to look at natural spawning, and we were doing that with northern pike. And when the goby came in, we weren't catching any northern pike eggs anymore. So I assume they were eating them, and that survey stopped where we were deploying egg traps. So, it's a big question because if it's that intense, the restoration potential is diluted, because if we bring back spawning adults and they don't succeed. But that's why I'm so, it's great to see the natural reproduction that you're seeing, like another spike this year, so that the muskies are able to pull it off. And like you said, there's some buffering capacity in the wetland environment. We see the same thing. No gobies up in the drowned river mouths in the wetland environment. We do see them in the muskie habitat though. So it's kind of there's a seasonal shift in goby distribution. So whether they're really, we get these giant ones in the muskie traps, that are 10 inches long and stuff. And they tend to be, I don't think they're the big egg eaters. I think they're more of a dracinid specialist. At least that's what the data was showing. So, but it's a great question. So I can't really answer it. I can dance around it, but
yeah,
so yeah. Obviously, you're seeing that big pulse in our numbers, and it's because of the fry and fingerling stocking. Our surveys are done prior to the fingerling stocking, so it's all the fry effect. So that's a pretty early life stage for a muskie to fulfill. So we're also encouraged by that. But it's great that you guys are kind of monitoring, full on natural reproduction, assuming there aren't movements that you're looking for, but, and we're, depending on a small sample of OTC marking kind of things. So it's really helpful that the FINS program is kind of covering sites that aren't receiving fish. So it kind of gives us another important piece of information about natural reproduction.
One more question on that, and do you expect some of the pit tagged individuals to move across?
Yeah,
The
probably after they leave the embayments. The studies we've looked at, like I showed you some of that growth data. So we're recapturing fish in the places where they were put so far. So we don't think that they're making big movements. I think you might remember that we worked with the Carlton group, Sarah Walton and Steve Cook's group, and we did a study with acoustic telemetry on fall juvenile muskie. And they move around a lot, but they weren't moving like more than hundreds of meters, not like kilometers. So it looks like they're staying pretty close, and then probably they reach some critical size where they begin to feel safe and wander into the river, and that's probably when they might make bigger movements. But hopefully that acoustic array will help reveal some of those patterns over time.
Was Gananoque one of the stocking sites too? Or did I see that on a map?
No, there's been no stocking in Canadian waters. We do,
Okay.
we are stocking though in some sites like on the backside of Grindstone and places where the river's pretty narrow down in Lake St. Lawrence that we're very close to Canada, like a stone's throw. So we don't think that the species is abiding by the international border. So that'll be another interesting thing to see if there's mixing going on both sides, or if there's like such tight fidelity to where they were released that they don't deviate. But I kind of doubt that's going to happen. I think that's more typical of like pike. And then
Okay.
I wanted to not to dominate, but your pike data is really interesting on the young of the year. So there were 2 spikes in there, 2017 and 2019. We saw the same thing.
Okay.
And you know what those years are, right? Those are the floods. So it's very reaffirming to me about the importance of water level and recruitment of that species. So we saw the same exact thing, huge spikes in the wetlands during those 2 years. So it's nice to see that in your data. So I think you're capturing some of the processes. There's some interesting consistency in our data sets. The other thing, have you seen Water Soldier?
We're running out of time.
Oh,
Yeah,
sure,
sorry, you get these scientists.
A good chat. I feel we should get you guys over lunch. And I know we've lost our moderator with Peter. He's down. Robert's going to make some concluding remarks, I think, and then if there's any follow-up that people want to have, we can keep the line open.
Okay, I do have something real quick, and this is for Colin and John. I'm going to send an email to you in reference to the St. Lawrence River and the information that normally we would collect for expired muskellunge, because I do want to get that out a little bit further dispersal than just our little group here. That's important. Also, in talking to it will take a couple of days before the link is out for this event in particular. It's going to be mailed to everybody that's online, and then it'll be posted. I believe we've got that. Brian, you'll be able to post that so people can start dipping into it. We'll probably look at pushing it through the Muskies Canada outlet, so they've got handles on it. As we close, I do have a closing statement here. As we close the 2023 St. Lawrence River Muskie Angler Workshop, I wanted to express my sincerest gratitude to Dr. John Farrell, Matt Wendell, and Colin Lake for lending their valuable time and share their expertise with us. It's very important. These events are very important. Their presentations were both revealing and engaging. We all learned valuable information that can be help conserve these great fish. I would also like to express my appreciation for Peter Levesque providing his guidance on implementation. We've been at this for a couple of years now. And of course, Brian Lambie and Red Brick Communications for helping us host this event. Hopefully we can lean on you a little bit there next year. To our fellow participants who joined us today, thank you for taking the time to come out on this Easter weekend. Your contributions are essential to making this workshop successful. On a personal note, and I am a son of the watershed, and I started my embarkation here in 1964 with my first experience picking up garbage in 1965 off the beaches. There are some significant changes. I follow this along and I look into the future. It's what I was trained to do, doing my old job. And these changes they have me a little bit concerned. And these are the influences of what's happening in Canada and what's happening in the US, and support for programs like Pledge to Clean Up the Great Lakes, and of course, natural and marine conservation areas. These are gray spaces to us anglers, and we don't understand enough about them. These changes must be met with education and not speculation, and that's how come we bring the experts out. As an angler, I can conceive ideas. I've been on the road, I've been on the water now for 15 years supporting programs to Parks Canada, so I got a pretty good idea. We got our finger on the pulse here. But we got to educate our people. We got to educate the anglers. It's the only way that we're going to get this moving forward. It will be up to the angling community to position themselves where they can provide the greatest effect, and that's supporting the sciences that are happening on the water. In closing, let us commit ourselves to the betterment of the muskellunge population in the Upper St. Lawrence River. Let's promote responsible angling and environmental stewardship for the benefit of all. Thank you and all the best in 2023, and I will be hanging around to field any questions if you have them. Cheers, over to you, Brian.
Great, we'll leave the channel open for a bit. If people want to just sort of mingle, there's no rush. I'll just have it in mute mode, and again, thanks to everybody for their participation today.
Thank you. I have to run to an Easter parade right now, but really great to see everybody. And please reach out if you have any thoughts or want to chat further. And John and Colin, I'll be in touch soon too.
Yeah, let's follow up, Matt. That'd be great. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Great
everyone.
stuff, man. Thanks. Thanks, everybody, for that awesome honor. I look forward to working with the group in the future. Really
John.
appreciate everything.
Yeah,
Thank you,
John,
John.
just so you're aware, I will be delivering that over to you when we take our next training adventure. So I do have that here for you. Got your name on it.
It's beautiful.
Focus is be a
Yeah,
lot
we'll
less
set that up.
formal.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's great, Rob, and look forward to seeing you guys. Good luck, good fishing, everybody.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Take care.
Yeah, good to see you, Lisa. See you guys. Bye.
That's it.
No, they're back up here.